The Hotep family. So we're gonna try to finish this book today. Uh, in fact, let's finish it definitely. So we left off right here at B, political military organization. Just want to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm reading this. I am Onitaset Kumat. I wrote the book Power, and this right here is the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, and it's written by Kwame Nkrumah. He's looking to unite Africa by arms. You know what I mean? This right here, there was actually a discussion about means and methods for African liberation. This right here is the real life discussion on African liberation, and not your little soft, oh well, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. He's saying, how can we organize cadres to take over the continent? So, without further ado, let's keep going. We're on page 56 of the book, but as you can see, it's a PDF. You can click the link in the description to get the PDF yourself and read along. Uh, but let's go right into it. B. Political military organization. So the following measures should be taken. One, the formation of an All-African People's Revolutionary Party (AAPRP) uh, to coordinate policies and direct action. And this is really important too, because what you know is that the AAPRP is Kwame Nkrumah's organization that follows Sekou Touré and Nkrumahism. You know, uh, Touréism and Nkrumahism, something like that. But that's really important because Kwame Nkrumah puts this into. I'm sorry, Kwame Touré puts this into action, and his name is a portmanteau of Sekou Touré and Kwame Nkrumah. So as you know, his government name was Stokely Carmichael, and he said, no, I'm going to be Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré, and that's another thing that's really important. So let's go. The creation of an all-African People's Revolutionary Army to unify our liberation forces and to carry the armed struggle through to final victory. You got to know what final victory is. So AAPRP and the All-African Committee for Political Coordination, the formation of a political party linked all liberated territories and struggling parties under a common ideology, will smooth the way for eventual continental unity and will at the same time greatly assist the prosecution of the All-African People's War. To assist the process of its formation, an All-African Committee for Political Coordination (AACPC) should be established to act as a liaison between all parties which recognize the urgent necessity of conducting an organized and unified struggle against colonialism and neocolonialism. Let me just make sure my mic is working. Yeah, let me just hold on a second. Oh, I know it's working. I don't know which mic I'm using, so I'm gonna try to check that out right now. Actually, there's so much stuff you gotta do in order to make recordings. Yeah, one time I did a whole recording, like 5 minutes, and my mic was off. Yeah, but you know how it is. Let's see if we can. All right, let's not even worry about it. I mean, I know you can hear me, so well, let's let me know in the chat if you can hear me well, and if not, okay. All right, so the AACPC as a political arm of the integrated in political consciousness. So a liaison between the recognize the urgent necessity of conducting an organized and unified struggle against colonialism and neocolonialism. This committee would be created at the level of the Central Committee of the ruling parties and struggling parties and would constitute their integrated political consciousness. The AACPC, as the political arm of AAPRA, would fulfill the following functions. 1. Ensure cooperation between the ruling parties of the liberated territories, building socialism and enable them to support each other in the fight against the internal enemy. Uh, So again, like part of it, like we have to understand, there are ruling parties. Okay, there are ruling parties. There are rulers and ruled in every society. Okay. Now here's the issue with socialism, right? Is that you take the economy out of the ruler's hands, uh, and into the ruled hands. And that's fine in theory, but in practice, what you want is you want the ruling class to be the most morally upright. The most morally upright and the most uh, far-seeing. The most I want to even say clairvoyant, right? But you want them to have this distinction, and therefore you actually trust the arm. You'd actually trust the economy in their hands. And that's where like a lot of us don't understand that. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, it's complicated. But as it is, you want revolution. You want revolution, and the only question is, what does that mean? Also, I want to let you guys remember to hit the like button. Uh, Apparently it's better for letting others know that there's a program going on. So promote widespread and collective ideological training for the cadres of parties, teaching the theory of anti-colonialist and anti-neocolonialist struggle, the case for African unity, and for the building of socialism. This will be done in AACPC schools or in political training camps throughout the liberated territories. So that's what I'm saying. You need to build schools and training camps. Build schools and training camps. Number 3, coordinate and harmonize all political effort and assistance given to the revolutionary movements in colonized or apartheid areas and to the progressive forces in all neo-colonized areas. So this is another thing too. It's like, instead of telling people, oh, repatriate, instead of telling people, oh, move, which is good advice, which is something that you should do yourself, understand that if they're not going to move, you can give political effort and political assistance to those who do not move, and that's something that, like, that can be done. The only thing is that, again, you want to focus on what you can do in your life, and the reality is that a lot of what can be done outside of Africa requires a strong Africa. So as far as I'm concerned, you have the most value in Africa, and if there's not a strong Africa, then your value outside of Africa is limited. You know what I mean? It's limited. So number 4, provide an organic link with the peoples of Africa, Asia, and Latin America who are struggling against imperialism. Organization of solidarity with the peoples of Africa, Asia, Latin America. Oh, that's a whole organization. OSPAAL. Okay. So, number 5, ensure permanent relations with the socialist states of the world. You see what I'm saying? Like, you get this though. Like, the socialist states of the world. So that's like, that's what I tell you. You see, you're having solidarity with the people of Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Okay? And now you have permanent relations with the people of Asia, Latin America. Like, come on. Number 6, maintain and create links with all workers' movements in the capitalist imperialist state. So that's white people's like, it's so easy to infiltrate. It's so easy to infiltrate. Now, here's the thing. I want you to understand. You should be infiltrating these capitalist imperialist, power structures. You should be trying to infiltrate them. But you also should try not to be infiltrated by the capitalist imperialist states or be infiltrated by any other people. You have to, it's infiltrate and resist infiltration. That's the name of the game. It's not infiltrate and open yourself for worse infiltration. And this is one of the critiques that I have of socialists. This is one of the critiques I have of communists and so on and so forth, is that they do not seem to grasp that they are being infiltrated. Like, they are opening the door, and when you open the door, you're effed. You know what I mean? You're effed. Hold on a second. Okay. Thus the AACPC would emerge as the organizational instrument of a united struggle, and a centralizing disciplinary organ providing permanent contact with the masses and with the scattered centers of this revolutionary activism. Such coordination would unify revolutionary action of the vanguard African territories and would enable them to exert decisive influence on the revolutionary liberation movement by allowing them to participate actively in it. Unite the struggle. You see what I'm saying? Permanent contact with the masses and scattered centers of revolutionary activity. Unify revolutionary action. You see what I'm saying? Like that's the thing. Your whole thing is to unify the world, and it's like you have all this mineral, you have all these mineral riches. Just keep them to yourself. Just hoard them. Just hoard them. Hoard them for Africa, and that's it. You know, and just keep it with the melanin. You know what I mean? Keep it in the family. You got me? Alright, the All African People's Revolutionary Army, members of the AAPRA, will be the armed representatives of the African People's Socialist Party struggling against colonialism and neocolonialism. They will be the direct product of the African Revolutionary Liberation Movement and will be organized as in Chart 5, page 64. You guys want to see page 64? Let's look at it. Let's look at this chart that he put so far away. Okay, so this is the AAPSRA. So you have the military executive, right? You have the Army General Staff, the political executive. So you have the Army, the military, and the political, right? Zonal command. You have zonal operation chiefs and zonal group, and you have northeast, west, center, south. You have the Army staff, the divisional staff, okay? Then you have the coordination with the territorial partisan command, okay? So this one has a territorial committee, and then this is the front line, and you have the guerrilla brigade, guerrilla battalion, company, platoon, and then you have the regional committee, district committee, and the village committee. So you see that there's a political, these are the triple chain of command. You have the triple chain of command, and that's really important that you have a chain of command. Now, so there's a C, B, A. He didn't really say what these are yet. Looks like B is, the guerrillas. Oh, so you can't see me pointing. Well, you can see me pointing, but you can't see what I'm pointing at. So right here, the guerrillas, you see B over here. C, whatever. But that's the whole point. This is chart 5, and we're going to go back to it, obviously. But just wanted to, since he referenced it, we wanted to just jump forward to it. So the Revolutionary Armed Forces will be under the direction of a high command made up of military leaders of the various revolutionary movements in Africa. This in its turn will come under the All-African Committee for Political Coordination, which represents the political leadership of the entire revolutionary movement. Thus, the military, the armed forces, will always be subordinate to and under the control of the political leadership. So you want the military subordinate to the political leadership. Again, you have to have a chain of command. In my book, in the Book of Power, I'd say, look, if you call yourself a soldier, who is your captain? Where is your captain? If you call yourself a captain, where is your general? And if you have a general, where is your king? Where is your political leader? You have to have some sort of hierarchy. If you do not have a hierarchy, you cannot maintain military forces to the degree that you think you could. The idea that you're going to fight, because again, one of the reasons why you would even say, yeah, let's ally with Asia and Latin America and all that. One of the reasons you say that is because, like it said earlier, Africa is being attacked on a Pan-African level. So that's why you would want to attack back on a Pan-African level. But at the same time, like realistically speaking, international finance capital is attacking on a global level. So you technically do want to have a global resistance. Now, what that entails is, a little complicated, right? What that entails is a little complicated, and it's not really that complicated. You just need everybody to come to Africa more or less, and then branch out. But the reality is that if you're going to large scale battle, that needs a hierarchy, that needs a structure. Guerrillas are good in like a certain locale, a certain location, but we're talking like a wide scale. Like you need some sort of structure, because if you don't have that structure, what happens is, it's easy to damage. It's easy to destroy. Like one of the reasons why, like I put on the book, one of the reasons why the Mau Mau were mostly Gikuyu, right? Or people say Kikuyu, right? But one of the reasons because it's like they didn't know if they could trust people outside of their group. Part of like they had like secret code words, and it just wouldn't work outside of their group. You know what I mean? It's really complicated, but or it's not even that complicated, but like you got to realize that if you don't have these sort of secret keywords, this sort of so on and so forth, anybody could just join and be like, oh, I'm a gorilla too, and then when you're sleeping, they stab you in your neck, and you're dead. Okay, so AA, or even somebody can come out and be like, hey, like for instance, I go outside, like so. All right, let me just say this: somebody can come out and say, hey, the war's over, the British we signed a treaty, the British are conceding, and we signed the treaty and everything's good. That's why a lot of the guerrillas like waited in the in the bushes for a long time because it was like, who the fuck can I trust? You know what I mean? And that's just the reality of it that if you don't have a hierarchy, no one knows like what's going on. Like you can't know what's going on. But all right, so AAPRA headquarters. The headquarters of the High Command of AAPRA will be located in a liberated territory where the people's power is firmly entrenched. Economic development is advanced enough to enable the territory to provide maximum resistance against imperialist aggression, in whatever form it might occur, and there are adequate communications, hospitals, printer presses, and other essential facilities. The territory must be in a condition of permanent preparedness for war, all its material and human resources being mobilized to make the area impregnable. As far as the mobilization of the people is concerned, trained and armed workers should be organized into militias. Likewise, in the agricultural sector, modern agricultural production should be organized along strategic lines. Cooperatives and state farms and other farmers' organizations will constitute the nuclei of self-defense throughout the territory and will be located strategically. Miners, industrial workers, transport employees, and others will be organized into disciplined self-defense units and will receive military training. Membership of militias will be voluntary and selective. The militant front thus created will struggle for a rapid transformation of the old order, against internal, 2 against the internal and external enemies, 3 for the building of socialism. The struggle will entail hardship and suffering, but it is a phase through which we must pass if we are to accelerate the achievements of a radical, qualitative transformation of the liberation movement. Such measures will be in 1, the reinforcements of political rectitude and moral strength, 2, the abolition of apathy and inertia, 3, the achievement of a higher capacity of resistance throughout the population, 4, an improvement of discipline and work, and consequently an increase in productivity. Thus, in base areas, it is essential to use the armed forces in conjunction with the masses in order to defeat the enemy. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Hey, greetings, brother. Can you hear? Can hear you loud and clear. Give thanks. Peace, brother. Peace, brother. Nat. All right. I'm glad I could be heard. I don't even know. Thus, in base areas, it is essential to use the armed force in conjunction with the masses in order to defeat the enemy. This can best be done through the creation of people's self-defense units, militia, trained to form a broad, united front against imperialism, ready to operate anywhere in Africa. If armed militia are not organized, the masses cannot manifest their power in the struggle against the enemy. So that's actually a really important idea right here. You want to have militia. So I was on the Discord we were having a discussion about warfare, and like male and female roles, gender roles, and one of the things I was making was that you want to be able to send your men to war, less so your women. And somebody else was making the point that no, we should have women and men. Like you can't have women not being militarily prepared in a sense, because then that could lead to their subjugation in a sense. And of course, that's like Western way of thinking that men and women are just trying to subjugate each other. Westerners are more of the opinion that men and women are in competition, but instead of going by that sense, but this right here is actually a decent compromise in the sense of saying, because I already had a compromise. I said, look, men are the primary protector and secondary healers, and women are the primary healers and secondary protectors, in the sense that you would give women, like you said, basic training in self-defense, but you're just not trying to send them out to die. You know what I mean? Or you're not trying to send them out to the front lines for whatever reason. You'd rather them be the back line, so that uh, the children are like doubly protected in a sense. Particularly if there's like a tactical error, a strategic error. But again, like having women and men in an armed militia at home isn't or ready to be an armed militia at home isn't a bad compromise. It's just the difference between and of course, like another thing that obviously you want to remember too is that in a modern warfare, you know, or at least the warfare that might aim to, you might have drone soldiers, like soldiers who are come at who do drones or whatever, and obviously that could be male or female because it's not really a high risk occupation, the so it's not like it really doesn't matter. But the point I wanted to just stress and emphasize is that our militia are not organized. If our militia are not organized, then they cannot manifest their power in the struggle against the enemy. Like essentially, the enemy is going to try to infiltrate. However, and you want everybody, all hands on deck. Uh, in general, a comparatively large territory will provide the best conditions for AAPRA headquarters if it contains a variety of physical features such as mountains, rivers, lakes, forests, plains, and even deserts, giving partisan detachments room to maneuver. Usually the best base areas are in the mountains or near rivers, lakes, and estuaries. Those in the plains are generally of a more temporary nature. The AAPRA original organizational command will be located in appropriate regions of the contested zone. So now this is like a really good book. You got to see how this is a really good book because he's telling you where to set up headquarters. Not too many books are telling you where to set up headquarters, and so for that, for that alone is really valuable. All right. Let's see. The AACPC and a revolutionary strategy. The High Command of AAPRA will work in close coordination with AACPC, and the smoothness of the liaison will be ensured by the fact that the leaders of the revolutionary movement animating the High Command will also be members of AACPC. The program and the strategy of the revolutionary forces will therefore be drawn up at High Command AACPC level on the basis of surveys of the political, economic, and military situation in the contested zones and in the enemy-held territories of the continent. Special action will be taken on the objective conditions favoring the liquidation of the oppressive regime in a particular zone or territory. A study will be made of the pro-revolutionary forces inside of the society under investigation and an assessment made of the socio-political importance of the workers, peasants, and members of the cooperative movement. This assessment will be made on the position occupied by the workers in the socio-economic context, the level of their class consciousness, and their degree of organization. In other words, the quality of the group will be a more important criterion than its numerical size. Right? Investigation along these lines is vital because in order to win a revolutionary war, a prolonged campaign for the support of crucial social group must be carried out. Likewise, no socio-economic program for the winning over of social groups can be drawn up without a clear understanding of the healthy and strategic elements of the country to be liberated. Now, let's actually this. Forces inside of the society under investigation, assessment made, and socio-political. Yeah, okay. So basically, you got to know who you're liberating. I mean, and that's the thing that you got to realize too, that when you talk about a fight for liberation, you are talking about liberating different people within different social groups within a group. A lot of times, the fake and phony people are saying, "Oh, I want to liberate black people. I want to liberate Africans." But like who, like particularly, or who specifically, or what group specifically, because like, are you gonna liberate the black bourgeoisie? You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you have to go by what is their class consciousness? Where's their consciousness? Where's their race consciousness? I should say. Where is all of that? What would be healthy and strategic to be liberated first and foremost? That's the question. I tell the story of Nat Turner. and how Nat Turner on his plantation, he didn't just go around telling everybody, "Oh, I plan an insurrection." He didn't do that. He watched, he monitored, and he said, "Okay, you 12, this is the plan." You know what I mean? Like he said, "Look, you guys are 12 strong brothers. Here's the plan." You don't go and tell it, like, it's you know based on attentive study and investigation, our revolutionary strategy will take into account and exploit the most determinant factors. A. The existence in Africa of 5 broadly differentiated zones. That's A. North, B. West, C. South, D. Central, E. East. These zones differ widely in climate, natural resources, industrial potential, and a general pattern of their social and political development. B. The existence within one zone of varying levels of productive development and of political maturity. Uh, for example, note the difference between conditions in the Republic of South Africa and in Southwest Africa. Although they are geographically neighbors and are both under enemy control, there is a gap between the productive forces of the Mali, Niger, Dahomey, Togo zone and those of territories like Ghana and Nigeria. But at the same time, the level of political awareness is almost identical amongst the people of Mali, Niger, Ghana, Nigeria, and Cameroon. C. The existence of the continent and even inside of our zone of industrial patches and of powerful portuary complexes. Uh, these represent highly strategic targets for our struggle, and this is why, in certain areas, more attention should be paid to mobilizing the proletariat, while in other parts, attention should first be paid to the rural workers. For example, the socio-political lever in one province of a state may be different from the one in another, although the same revolutionary struggle is being waged throughout the country as a whole. Our revolutionary strategy will therefore be adapted suitably to the variations between zones and territories endowed with important patches of industrialization in areas where feudal and patriarchal rural institutions predominate. Again, it will distinguish between territories with a vertical class structure denoting low development of productive forces, or with an embryo of industrialization. What is it? Hold on a second. Anyway, our revolutionary okay, so interesting. I guess I was called to be informed that someone's listening. Alright, now let's see if they tell on themselves. But alright, so where was I? Our revolutionary struggle would therefore be adapted. Oh gosh. Being waged through the country as a whole. Our revolutionary strategy will therefore be adapted. Our revolutionary strategy will therefore be adapted suitably to the variations between zones and territories endowed with important patches of industrialization in areas where feudal and patriarchal rural institutions predominate. Again, it will distinguish between territories with a vertical class structure denoting low development of productive forces, with an embryo of industrialization. Our revolutionary struggle. Alright. Our revolutionary struggle will therefore be adapted suitably to the variations between zones and territories endowed with important patches of industrialization in areas where feudal and patriarchal rural institutions predominate. Again, it will distinguish between territories with a vertical class structure denoting low development of productive forces with an embryo of industrialization, and territories with a strong modern proletariat force, part of which may be working outside the African continent. The latter may, if organized cohesively, play an important part in the liberation movement by means of sabotage and subversion at the very core of the capitalist imperialist states. The study, working outside the African continent. So he's talking about like African Americans, like African English, Black British, whatever. The latter. All right. So the study in depth of the objective situation and the elaboration of a revolutionary strategy are tasks to be undertaken jointly by AAPRA and the AACPC in order to ascertain our own situation at all levels, as well as that of the enemy. The deepening of our knowledge will enable us to avoid wasting our energy in useless skirmishes and battles. Once strategic targets and the points of maximum anti-imperialist resistance are determined, revolutionary forces will know exactly which parts to avoid for the time being and which to attack first. You know, that's the question. That's the question on the day. Where do you attack first? Where do you avoid? That's the question of the day. There will be no question of AAPRA violating sovereignty when entering a national territory for the purpose of liberating and uniting Africa, since all African territory belongs to the African people as a whole, and the will of the African people is expressed in the African Revolution. So, look, like that right there, like y'all don't even know. Pieces. All right. This is something that we don't even know. Like Kwame Nkrumah right here is saying, you like who cares about your sovereignty? We are not violating your sovereignty when we enter your nation to unite Africa. You don't have sovereignty. Africa is for African people. Africa for the Africans. We don't care about your sovereignty. Now that's a strong statement. That's a strong statement. I don't know if I would say that myself, you know, because I believe that we should create a sovereign nation ourselves. Uh, but yeah, like at the end of the day, a part of you being a revolutionary, this is why people don't like you. People won't like you. They won't like you. Is that your goal is not to uphold the sovereignty of other people so much. Uh, so let's see, the Army Corps. On the basis of our revolutionary strategy, the liberation forces of AAPRA will be divided into 5 armies. That's the Northern, Western, Southern, Central, Eastern. The divisions constituting the various armies will be formed from the following sources. Troops allocated to AAPRA by the ruling parties in the liberated territories, volunteers, and then freedom fighters units already in existence. For the creation of our Continental People's Militia is a logical consequence of the unfolding of the African liberation struggle and is the essential condition for the emergence of a people's free and united Africa. Alright, so then you already saw this part, you know, like this is the organizational chart, how things are formed. I'm sorry, you can't see my hand. How things are formed, guerrillas, you know, and political committees. You know, so a lot of it is going to be guerrilla warfare. Since the objectives, and the thing is this, that it doesn't have to be guerrilla warfare. That's really important. It doesn't have to be guerrilla warfare. It can be like regular ass warfare. Sorry, regular warfare. But again, you know, in those circumstances, the reason why you have the guerrilla is because they can disperse quickly. They can attack sites and disperse, and before the other military has a chance to respond, as opposed to, you know, traditional warfare where everyone knows that you're coming, you know where the battle's going to be, and if they have greater force than you, which they usually do, then, you know, like you're kind of walking to a death trap. So with guerrilla warfare, it's more like, hey, attack this target, or this target's weak, do, then get out. You know, spread out, minimize your casualties, and just rapid, quick. You know, because even if they take 5 minutes to mobilize, if you take 3 minutes to destroy something and leave, they won't reach you. You know, especially if you disperse, you know, in a nice pattern. So you do that, boom, 3-minute attack, 3-minute attack, 3-minute blitz, 3-minute blitz, you know, and then, you know, their 5-minute response time, or their, you know, just doesn't work. It's kind of like, you know, how people say the police don't stop crime. They kind of show up afterward, you know, try to investigate later, you know. And then with a guerrilla warfare, it's like, oh, you can investigate, but nobody's telling you anything, you know. So that's another, like, that's something that's really important. Okay. So, wait, hold on a second. Peace, brother. How you doing? Say peace, bro. All right. So, let's see. Since the objectives of the Armed Liberation Forces are both political and military, AAPRA's structure is devised accordingly with the separate chains of command and machinery for coordination. AAPRA Division C may be used to follow up and complete the political and insurrectionary work developed by 1. The political committees which prefigure the new form of administration to be established in the newly liberated zone, and 2, the guerrilla units. So there are going to be guerrilla units, and then there's going to be the military arm of the guerrilla units. Oh, sorry. Guerrilla units, and then the military arm. So B is the guerrilla units. They don't really have a chain of command. Oh, they do. Military executive, partisan command. This right here, C, is more the army kind of thing. Clean up. Like say, follow up and complete the work. And the guerrilla units kind of just have like a much more limited structure, but there's a coordination. It's a three-way coordination with the political structure, which is A. See? Okay. All right. So therefore, AAPRA's forces C will act in support of the armed people's struggle and not precede it. Although in certain extreme cases, specialized sections of AAPRA can serve as generators of the people's armed struggle by supplying equipment and cadres to the partisan units still lacking such material. As the people's revolutionary struggle advances, professional armies as such will gradually disappear until, with the achievement of total African liberation and unity, and the establishment of all African Union government, they will vanish completely. The defense of Africa will then rest entirely on the Continental People's Militia. So that's pretty interesting right here. As the revolutionary struggle advances, professional armies will gradually disappear until the achievement of total African liberation. And then he just expects the People's Militia. So that's interesting. I want you to understand that that's a problem. He just wants People's Militia to defend Africa, as opposed to an African army, a professional army. I want to tell you this. I want you to know, like, the first 3 speeches in my book were like written at, I want to say, like at one of like when I was most black nationalist, if you will, right? And one of them is like Taharka speaking, and Taharka's laying out how Kemet fell, and one of the reasons why Kemet fell is because the Assyrians had a standing army, a professional army of 200,000 ironclad soldiers. Iron being the most advanced metal at the time. So 200,000 is a lot of soldiers. You can't fight 200,000 as an individual. You can't fight 200,000 as a militia. I mean, sure, you can, with guns, but even that, like, again, like with iron, it's a gamble. But the point being, though, is that the professional army is actually an excellent defense. And if you look, like I said, go with my book, you'll see Delaney says, look, if you have 40,000 soldiers, you could defend the civil rights of African people in America. But then, of course, we don't have 40,000 soldiers, so we don't defend the civil rights. But a large of it is that, this right here is actually incorrect. I want to say it, that this right here, you don't want to vanish your standing army. And this is partly, like, again, this is one of the reasons why I don't mess with socialism, because of things like this. The defense of Africa will then rest with the Continental People's Militia. A militia is just not, I mean, it depends on, well, we have to see, but for the most part, you do not, like, you want a professional class of military people under leadership. Guerrilla warfare is important for our struggle because we don't have, we gotta hit and move, but let's, alright, so during the preliminary stag of the liberation of a particular territory, AAPRA divisions will be stationed in a base area in a nearby liberated zone. However, once the people's struggle has begun inside the contested zone, the supporting division of AAPRA will camp along the borders of the contested zone. This movement is to be coordinated at the level of the regional or zonal army staff and the regional or zonal participant command partisan command in order to begin the campaign in coordination with the territorial partisan command concerned. This step is to be decided upon at the level of the army and divisional staffs. The result is a vice-like movement closing in on the enemy in a contested zone, with the guerrilla units and the political committees always ahead of the visible front line. So that's pretty interesting. So during the stag of the particular, however, once stationed in the base of the liberated zone, however, once the people's struggle has begun inside the contested zone, The struggle division of the will camp along the borders of the contestants of the movement is to coordinate at the level of the regional. Yeah, so look at this right here. So he's saying, here's a strategic plan. Here's one of the plans, right? You have a base. Okay, this is your base. Phase one, the formation of political nuclei. So you have political nuclei, which are the X's, right? Creation of centers of armed, and then the guerrilla centers are the O's. Creation of centers of armed struggle. So you have these O's, and then you have the AIPR division are stationed in the base. So you have your divisions, which are stationed in your base, right? Stage two is that when phase two is agitation is develops. So the center of the armed struggle develop and multiply. So no longer is this just a few guerrillas, you have more guerrillas, and it's more agitation for whatever cause, and then the APRPR division advances at the border of the enemy held territory. So then the base then already advances. So you have the western front, and you go around them. So here they have the enemies located. You are then the guerrillas are behind them in the enemy's rear, and they are in front, but in front of them is our base, our attack. So like he said, it's like it's military strategy right here. So phase three, the AAPRA enters into contact with the enemy division, right? So you have your forces and you come into contact with the enemy, and then a visible, so that means a visible front line or zone of regular combat, right? But in fact, our forces already infiltrated the territory and are the invisible front in the enemy's rear. So we're already behind them because we were agitating a priori, beforehand. So that's it. Like this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be agitating behind enemy lines, agitating and arming your people behind enemy lines. In a sense, this brother's gonna get angry at me because he was telling me this earlier, but it's not even he's not listening, so it's all good. But yeah, agitate behind enemy lines. So equipment and composition of the armed forces. AAPRA will be a force ready to operate in any part of Africa. It must therefore be equipped with the most modern aircraft, vehicles, and weapons, emphasis being placed on firing power, speed, mobility, and lightness. Because again, it's like the brother was saying, guerrilla warfare. AAPRA will also include specialized technical units, for example, mass psychology teams and units spreading audio, visual, and written propaganda by means of radio, films, news sheets, etc. Social service specialists trained to conduct literacy campaigns to promote child care, public hygiene, and other social welfare services, and technicians specializing in agriculture and in rural processing industries. D. Cattle raising and fishery experts. E. Medical officers. And F. Cultural experts. So you want technical units that are focusing on these things. Members of AAPRA are not to be considered primarily as professional soldiers, but as civilians trained in arms, highly qualified fighters who are at the same time efficient workers. They'll act to serve, not to subjugate the broad masses. Our war is not a war of conquest, it is a war of revolutionary liberation. We fight not only in self-defense, but to free, unite, and reconstruct. And that's another thing that you want to emphasize too, that it's not about self-defense. A lot of times, that's what we're always focusing on. Oh, we just want to defend ourselves. We just want to protect ourselves. No, we want to liberate. Okay, we want to liberate. So let's go, recruitment. It is from the broad masses of the people that the revolutionary liberation movement is born. It is therefore from among the peasants, workers, members of cooperatives, and youth that AAPRA will draw its main strength. In recruiting volunteers, preferences will initially be given to members of organizations of an all-African character. So that's the I keep doing the I thing, sorry. 1. Peasants organization. 2. Trade unions. 3. Progressive student organizations. 4. Youth organizations. 5. Women's organizations. 6. Cooperative movements. So, these are the ones that you want to think. These forces will be supplemented by volunteers allocated to AAPRA by progressive and militant African parties and governments. Chart 7. Commission of Colonial and Recruitment. Registering of the volunteers, control, social, political, medical, and psycho-technical section, incorporation service. Before enrolling a volunteer, the commissions of control and recruitment will investigate A. his social origin. So before enrolling a volunteer, so before you get a volunteer, you want to investigate his social origin, his quality as a worker and as a man, and his ideological orientation. He will then undergo tests to assess his character, intellectual capacity, moral and physical fitness. Uh, and this is really, you already know what I'm gonna say about this, because as far as, I don't know about Nkrumah, to be honest. I don't know if he was betrayed by his right hand person. You guys can tell me that. Uh, but I mean, Nkrumah was technically betrayed by a lot of people. But like testing their like investigation of character, a lot of people can fake it. A lot of people can fake it. And that's the one of the problems with the Ascati. That's one of the problems with the COINTELPRO and all that. But enemy agents and adventurers of all kinds will attempt to join AAPRA. We must be constantly on the alert to recognize them and prevent them from infiltrating our revolutionary armed forces. For this reason, particular attention will be paid to tests designed to discover if the volunteer is ideologically sound and if he has given a true account of his origin and previous place of employment. And as the armed liberation struggle develops and expands, whole units of African troops at present being used by the enemy or their principle of let African fight African will desert and want to join the AAPRA forces. These troops will be welcomed and given every encouragement, but as soon as possible they will be screened individually in accordance with regular AAPRA procedure and will receive ideological instruction. General principles of training. Since members of the Revolutionary Armed Forces have social, political, and military responsibilities, recruits will go through various levels of training in these three spheres. The aim of our training is not to turn out men into killing machines or mercenaries, but into mature and progressive men, intellectually and materially equipped with a revolutionary task. The quality and training of recruits for revolutionary units is of particular importance. A, because our effective strengths will, at the start, be much lower than the enemy's numerical strength. Okay? Often as low as 10 to 1. So oftentimes you're going to be, the enemy is going to outnumber you. Right? And he's saying it's not about being a killer, it's about being a revolutionary, which means that you have a political education. Uh, uh, I think it was, I quoted it today, Thomas Sankara said, a soldier without a political uh, education is a potential criminal. So you want to emphasize political education. So let's go. B, because by the very nature of this performance and because of our initial effective force is comparatively small, the African revolutionary fighter must be a highly specialized soldier. So thus the initial military imbalance between ourselves and the enemy will be compensated by our technical and moral superiority. All recruits will receive the same basic training and will then proceed to specialist courses to prepare them for the specialized units of AAPRA. Commanders of revolutionary armed units will constantly bear in mind the need to carry out frequent checks on all members of AAPRA to make sure that the highest standard of work and performance of duty is maintained, and two, to test morale, which is the will to fight. They will also see that organizational machinery is tightly consolidated and that ideological training is thoroughly and regularly pursued. It is not the object of our education and training to turn out men who are servilely obedient, but men who respect discipline and are efficient and active because they are fully committed to the revolutionary struggle. Instead of promoting hierarchic, coercive, and follow-like sheep relationships, our training will seek to develop an intelligent, egalitarian, critical and self-critical outlook within the armed forces. Our fighters will be self-disciplined, revolutionary men and women. Okay, so especially at this time, you don't really at this time when you're being outnumbered 10 to 1, obviously it's going to be men and women. Of course, again, this is brother. I want to listen to his lecture because he goes, he says he used the dichotomy of revolution and resolution. Like what happens after the revolution. But for the revolution, obviously, at this time when we're so severely outnumbered, it's like take what you can get. You know what I mean? But like resolution, the idea of what is the circumstances post-revolution, that in itself is a whole other question. That's when, that's a whole other question. Training courses, socio-political and military, will be given in training centers located in the base area in an already consolidated liberated zone. It is necessary to have several centers operating in different territories or regions. Such centers must remain secret. Before the volunteers are sent to the centers, they will be put under observation in schools where they will receive basic education and political instruction and pursue courses designed to develop their faculties of observation and deduction. During this stage, the final process of screening and recruiting will be applied. and the unsuitable volunteers rejected. At the end of the basic course, the successful recruits will be directed to primary training centers. So this is something that you also want to do. You want to be, when you say, hey, I'm going to repatriate to Africa, you want to make these training centers in Africa where we test our people physically and politically, physically and intellectually. Okay? Physically, intellectually, and spiritually. We want to test our people out before we arm them and so on and so forth. And not doing that, we're just asking to be infiltrated. We're asking to be destroyed. We're asking to be sabotaged. You have to be very meticulous, but you also have to have these training centers. You have to have these faculties. You have to, like, you have to vet volunteers, but not just vet volunteers. Have something for them. Have something for them to be at, to go to. Let's see this. It's all about strategy to break down the forces of the enemy and weaken them. Traitors is always the power for us. Exactly. Kwame Nkrumah was betrayed by the fact that he was not truly raised first. He married an alien and had Zionist Jews in key positions within his Israeli movement. Yeah, I mean that's true too. That's the thing right there. It's like, yeah, I mean that's the thing I was saying about Kwame Nkrumah. That he, yeah, you got to be race first. You have to understand a lot. Like, a lot of the problems with our people is that when we go by the socialist mentality, we kind of go on the all people, and it's like, I understand. Like I said earlier, you're waging war on a global sense. So you're saying, hey, look, I need a global opposition. That makes a lot of sense. But understand that, that's going to make you liable to infiltration. Because, again, these other people are not your people. So let's see, this brother, son of Odemari, peace, brother, how you doing? Within the constructs of today's world, raising a volunteer army, militia is fraught with perils because professional armies have a level of commitment and tactic that cannot be approached by volunteers. Exactly, like, and the thing is this too. It's like with the police. The police, y'all don't really know, or y'all might not be familiar, but the police train every day to beat up a black person. I mean, it don't really show, because a black man could obviously take them down. But at the same time, it's like, you want people who can train every day for the task of taking down their enemies. And militia, by definition, don't do that. Militia may join up every once in a while, but it's you're talking about, you want people with a full-time job, which is to win wars, and that's what a professional army is about. How can we make these training centers more lucrative or as obvious to attend as the regular state school? So peace, brother, and power. How can we? How can we? Like the thing is this: anything can be lucrative if you're selling it. The thing is that we have to, you just have to set the price. You're gonna fly out to Africa and train with the best martial artists. Okay? If you're serious. Or train with the best school. The best instructors. We get the best instructors, and I'm not including myself. Well, you get the best instructors, you get the best martial arts instruction, and you say, hey, look, for this much months, for this much money, that's the program. It's once a year, and you get certified, you get so on and so forth, and you just make it profitable. You make it so that if you have 10 students, it works. And by works, I mean like this. You could contract a martial arts instructor. I mean, of course, you can't do martial arts in just 2 months, 3 months, or whatever. But you contract this martial arts instructor for 10 for 2 months. You contract this professor or this set of professors for 2 months, whatever. The point being that you can do it. It's just that we don't, and you can make it lucrative. Because the reality is that our people are paying this stuff, and the only reason why, and like for the best instruction, it's gonna cost you, and you fly them out to Africa to train. Come on, like you don't have to make it cheap per se. And the thing is that if it's only 2 months for an instructor, it's not going to cost you that much. It might cost you a little bit, but then you charging enough people, And you got it. Security defense is essential to any sovereign nation, so appropriations may be made for the expense of defensive forces. Exactly. Of defense forces. Ashe. You know? Alright, let's go back to this. So physical training. So the body and its physical endurance must be weathered, strengthened, and developed by exercise and by exposure to many varied conditions. For example, marching under conditions of duress, camping, 2, camping in difficult terrains, 3, subsisting on short rations for limited periods, 4, enduring periods of isolation in small groups cut off from base, and 5, carrying out rigorous individual initiative and endurance tests. And that's another thing too, like to make it lucrative. I actually want to go back to that point about make it lucrative. True, we need strong warriors that can stay in the bush and build up the capable fighting force. You know, I want to about making it lucrative. That's government's job. Lucrative is government. Like the brother was saying, you know, you have funds allocated towards maintaining the military. You understand? It's like asking how can we get like you say how training centers more lucrative. Police academies are paid for by the government. You understand? You don't need a simple thing. Police academies are paid for by the government. Military training zones are paid for by the government. So what we need to do is we need to organize. But like governments, they pay through taxes. I've said it in one of the speeches I did a long time ago. You want to check out the work? Go to the top 10 list, right? The top 10 list is not even 10 on there yet. But the top 10 list, one of them is the speech on $5,000, blah blah blah. Right? And the idea is that if you charge everybody 10% of their income, if you guys are paying 10% of your income somewhere, right? That 10% can be used to pay people to train. You understand? Instead of getting people to pay to train, you can pay people to train. So you tell these young black folk who ain't got no work or whatever, these unemployed black folk or whomever, or the underpaid black folk, you say, look, I'll give you $25 an hour, right? Or even if you're in Africa, you don't have to go that high. But you could be like, look, I'll give you $10, I'll give you $25 an hour, okay? Peace, brother. Yeah, that's my dude. All right, $25 an hour, right? To train, to hone your body, train your skills, do military drills and all that, and then afterward we'll pay you $35 if you graduate. We'll pay you $30 an hour, or we'll continue to pay you $25 an hour, right? I'm cheap, right? But we'll continue to pay you $25 an hour to like defend the community, police your own community and all that stuff. The point is that the economics and the economy, if the government pays for that, so all you have to do is be taxed. You pay 10% of your income. You're employing the people of your community, right? Because again, if 50 people, like even if you make $10 an hour, right? If just 50 people, like if 50 people make $10 an hour, right? 10% of their taxes makes it so that $50 an hour is going to the collection plate, and that's just 50 people. So for 50 people, you could pay 2 people to more than them to be about the defense of their people. Okay, and of course that's just 50 people. If you have 500 people, then you could pay instead of 2 people, 20 people. You understand? And the numbers just keep growing. So as you expand, like the point being, and to the point where you don't even have to just pay, obviously just for your defense, you can pay for the whole government system and all that. The point being that every people, and this was coming from our ancestors. That's what I articulate to our people, is that our ancestors had this taxing system already. We talk about how the ancient Kemetu would look at how much crops you were you should have made according to the size of the lake or the size of the river Nile, and then took collected grains accordingly. So we had a system of taxation already, and with those taxes they were able to finance their own military force, their own government, their own monuments, projects, and all that. Create beer and tell people in beer, whatever. The point being that you are supposed to, if you're in an organization, that's what I said earlier today too, if you're in an organization, you should be financing your liberation. That's it. You should be financing your liberation. But let's go. Rigorous initiative and endurance tests. You know, so daily exercise will help to promote both physical and moral stamina. Our troops must be trained to operate equally effectively face to face with the enemy and in various guises. Behind enemy lines. They should be taught the art of impersonation and how to conduct themselves if captured and interrogated. The development of speed and skill is of the greatest importance in practicing attacks, dispersion, regrouping, encircling, retreating, close combat, commando-type maneuvers, and sabotage. So then the technical training. The aim of the primary training centers is not to form a military elite, but to help our men to establish contact with the concrete realities of the struggle and to maintain this contact. The centers will therefore be self-sufficient, and the men will engage in farming, plantation work, and cattle raising on adjacent plots of land as part of their daily task. They will be taught to set up small handicraft and processing industries to manufacture uniforms and equipment, shoes, cartridge belts, ammunition, light arms, etc. This will enable the AAPRA budget to concentrate on the purchase of military and transport equipment, which cannot be manufactured locally, while leaving the major parts of provisioning and clothing to the men themselves. So you see that now that's one of the problems too, that you don't want to see, because you say self-sufficient. You say self-sufficient on one part, and then you say the budget is going to buy things that they cannot manufacture locally. That's not necessarily self-sufficiency. You want to, in your technical training, you want to a certain extent, obviously, to a certain extent, you want people to develop their own things, entirely. And that's actually reminds me of Booker T. Washington School. Booker T. Washington had a school where they built everything, more or less. Obviously, there's some things you just can't build, So that's probably what Kwame Nkrumah was referring to. But at the same time, it's like you want to, like with Booker T. Washington, it's like at some point you get to a level where you can build everything, because again, somebody's building whatever you allegedly can't build, and nobody should be able to do things that you can't be able to do. But again, the technical training, that's important. Again, you can pay people to get this technical training. If we organize and say, hey, look, we're an organization, we're giving 10%. We're giving 10% of our income to this infrastructure. Here's my kid. My kid is capable. Pay him to get the training. He'll get the he'll get the military training, he'll get the technical training, he'll get the military training, he'll get the political education, and by he, I mean he or she. They will get this training, and we will be paying for it. And that's good. You understand? So that now this kid doesn't have to worry about, this kid doesn't have to come out of his pocket. Because look here, I'm telling you, when I was in grad school, they paid me. You understand? They paid me to study the stars. To learn how to study the stars. And not just me, all the grad students in my school were being paid to do that. Obviously it's different for medical degrees or whatever. But the point being that, at some and I think this was a state college, so it's the state was paying people, paying young people to learn how to study, to have technical training. You understand? It's not unusual, but if we don't have a government, if we don't have a state that demands taxes from us, we can just give those taxes ourselves, and that's what the church is doing. Okay, the church, the 10% thing is the tithes that the church has. And not just the church, the Muslims have it, the Jews have it, the Christians have it. All the Abrahamic religions have this tithes, and that's partly why they are the most effective religions on the planet, because they have a war budget that can then be used toward their, how they will wage war, and we don't. If I ask you where's the Pan-African war budget, you're gonna laugh at my face. You know what I mean? Let's see right here. Remember, we're dealing with grassroots people. We might not have the funds, but if we dedicated people, we'll do what we have to build a strong fighting force. Their stipends are heavy in grad school, especially in STEM. Yeah. So yeah, see, we might not have the funds. This is the thing right here. I want to say about this funds thing. My mother, poor, okay, impoverished. every year without fail, every month without fail, she would give 10% of her income. You understand? Every year, like, because the thing is that you could survive on 90% of your income, and this was 10% of her income to a church, and everybody liked her. I mean, she made a good penny, right? Everybody liked her at the church. You know, they were like, "Oh, keep giving you 10%." You know what I mean? But that's something that we have to understand, that our people are already giving 10% away, even when we allegedly don't have. When we allegedly don't have our funds, even our poorest are giving 10% to the church. You understand? Even our poorest. So it's not that we don't have, it's that we don't have for our liberation. And that's the problem. You know, we have for, you know, what we consider, you know, the importance of religion. We have for whatever religion promises us, you know, afterlife or whatever. But we don't have it for liberation. And that's the difference. Like, so, but the thing is this: a lot of the so-called Pan-African nationalists are out of the church, and a lot of them have more than the masses. But a lot of but how many of them are giving 10%? Now the poor masses, the alleged poor masses, are giving away 10%, and then the well-to-do Pan-African nationalists aren't. Not even the leadership, not even the class that, you know, has. They're not giving 10%. So we have to say to ourselves, let's organize a 10%. Let's organize a plan for training centers. Let's organize with that 10% to send our own people to these training centers. So military training. The practice of shooting will be given special emphasis, for marksmanship is the core of apprenticeship. I don't know where that quote's from, but you make it like a quote, and it's like, I never heard that in my life. In this field, the guerrilla fighter must be very skilled, for it is necessary to use a minimum of ammunition. Now, see, that's not the American way. The American way is just shoot, just spend the bullets. But anyway, recruits will be taught to use a varied range of arms and to shoot with deadly accuracy at fixed and moving targets. Use of explosives will also be taught. Apart from acquiring a thorough knowledge of all kinds of AAPRA arms and equipment, pupils of training centers must A. Study and be familiar with equipment used by the enemy. B. Recognize the different types of aircraft the enemy uses or is likely to use in the various regions of our national territory. And C. Learn to make use of any supplies captured from the enemy. Right? Political education. 1. Every fighter must know, 1. Against whom he is fighting, and 2. Why is he fighting? So political education is centered on the key motive of the war, the will to be free. Our essential objective is to build a socialist society promoting better living and working conditions for all, a socialist society under a union government of Africa. So again, like you already know what I was saying to that. But each recruit will, during the course, I know my brother showed up, so I don't know if he's gonna say anything. He ain't say nothing. Okay. But all right. Each recruit will, during the course of his training, attend class in which the illogical aspects of our struggle will be explained and discussed. He will study such subjects as, for example, 1. African history, 2. Pan-Africanism, 3. Socialism in Africa. And you see the typo. People be like, yo, Oni, why you got a typo in your book? Right. Socialism in Africa and in the world context. And then 4. Imperialism and neocolonialism. So, yeah, those are good subjects. Obviously, like I said, I would change socialism to Pan-African. I would change these two, Pan-Africanism and socialism, to Pan-African nationalism. But at the same time, it's okay. Teachers will encourage recruits to express their own views and to discuss any current political, social, economic, or religious problems with which may interest them. Discussion between recruits from different parts of Africa will be particularly valuable in stimulating mutual understanding and dedication to the common ideal of continental liberation and unity. So leadership. The egalitarian nature of AAPRA forces should eliminate or reduce to a minimum the hierarchic partitioning of ranks. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. You don't want, like, that's what I'm saying with socialism. You do not want to eliminate the hierarchic partitioning of ranks. You don't. Alright. Instead, our forces will be characterized by a well-planned division of revolutionary labor between intelligent and purposeful men. Intimidation and bossing must be relentlessly fought against because it is based on hierarchic, pyramid-like conceptions of authority, which is merely a useful screen for the rise of power of ambitious and petty-minded men. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is one of the issues with socialism. I want to say is that you're grounded in this Eurasian, like this Eurasian psychosis. So yes, the white man would be abusive of power. You know, the white man would be abusive of power, but that's not something that the black man will do. You know, like we have a history. We have an African history where we had kings and we had queens, and they were not abusing their power. They were doing good for their people. Okay, they were doing good for our ancestors. Our king, like you have to understand that a lot of the pantheon of ancient Africa were the kings and queens of the past. They were so well venerated that they became not just ancestors, but above ancestors. Okay? Necheru, Orisha, Obasam, they were so respected and respectable, so moral and outstanding that to this day we recognize these real individuals, these real leaders, for how good and honest they were. We cannot just say, oh, we can't trust a hierarchy. Like Wazungu is different from us. We have, like, that's why I say I don't like socialism, because it's you have to understand that Wazungu and us do not share the same asili. Like, I want you to understand that if you're going by this basis that any hierarchy is bound to, it's not the same asili. All right. You're right, but as you say, the so-called Pan-Africanists ain't supporting the struggle, so we need real warriors who's willing to put whatever little we have and make it work. For sure. For sure. You know? I know y'all heard me kind of get a little emotional there, right? I'm gonna cry. All right. However, it is vital that certain men should assume command, and this. Oh, by the way, you know, I'm grateful for you guys being here. This is actually more fun than talking to myself. You know. All right, let's go. And it's actually more fun than reading by myself. So thanks for that. All right. However, it is vital that certain men should assume command, and in this connection, useful reference may be made to the solutions provided by the Cuban Revolution, which ranks are only introduced from lieutenancy upward, and revolutionary fighters pass directly from the rank of ordinary soldier to that of lieutenant, but only as a result of acts of initiative and courage shown in the course of the struggle. So you see what he's saying, though. In the Cuban Revolution, you still had a hierarchy. I would go soldier, captain, general, king. Okay? I mean, obviously, you know, lieutenant and all that stuff, those are actually pretty good too. But the point being, or even like stars and the generals and all that, distinctions of generals, that's all nice. But the point being that you have a hierarchy. You can't say no hierarchy. You even say, look, actually, Cuban Revolution, you did need a lieutenant. Because again, it's a wide scale battle. You can't, no matter what, there's no one individual who can see the whole war. Like, you can't expect every individual in every position to be able to see the whole war, and you can't expect to explain everything to every individual. You know, you can't, like. And the thing is, this is a real revolutionary. This is Kwame Nkrumah. He's a real revolutionary. So it's just depressing, you know, because, you know, but this is the thing you got to realize, that even with this sort of, you know, this sort of thinking, he's able to do so much, you know, much more than, like, more or less all of us alive. Okay? So we can't be outdone. You understand? We can't be outdone. We have to say to ourselves, look, it's time to show the world why we come from a revolutionary legacy. You know, why we come from, why we're descended from Nkrumah, why we're descended from Sankara, why we're descended from Cabral, why we're descended from Mugabe, why we're descended from Dessalines, why we're descended from Nani, why we're descended from Nzinga, why we're descended by Taharka, why we're descended by these people. You know, we have to continue our tradition, and where we may critique them, like you see the brother before was critiquing Nkrumah. You know, even if we can, we have to match works. We have to match works. We had social policy before this new age socialism. We got to go back to our old ways. Exactly. Ashe, brother. You know, we have to match works. We cannot, we can say, look, Nkrumah was blah, 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 or how he was betrayed, or if he was betrayed. It doesn't matter. He liberated the country. We haven't. You understand? We have to. Can't get my accent out, Alright. Revolutionary fighters must be so highly trained and self-reliant that each one of them is capable of assuming responsibility if the need arises. Now that's important. Right? Authority and subordination. Well, it's not really that important, but yeah, it's smart. Authority and subordination are required in the organization of any collective effort, and this applies particularly in military affairs where discipline is essential. You see what I'm saying? Authority and subordination are required, but the idealization of leaders must be guarded against. The general must be seen not in isolation from the masses, but as inseparable from them. No general, however skilled, can be successful without the loyal support of inspired, disciplined men who have a thorough knowledge of the issue at stake in the war, are prepared to make any sacrifice required of them, and have confidence in his leadership. That's okay. That's good. The people are the makers of history, and it is they who, in the final analysis, win or lose wars. Thus, the leaders of our armed forces will be representatives of the political leadership of our great liberation struggle, and will express the basic interests of the entire African continent. Let me just read this before I go into the chat again, okay? Our human forces. African societies cannot be divided into clear-cut, sharply differentiated classes because, 1, too many complex and varying factors crisscross and interact, rendering the socio-economic groups fluid and interdependent. And 2, the level of development of the means of production is still too low. Nevertheless, there does exist an emerging pattern of social groups, some of which are more developed than others. Most of them are potentially revolutionary. But in sharp contrast, there is a surface scum of puppets, opportunists, and local reactionaries. You gotta remember that. You have these. It must be our aim to bring out the revolutionary potential of all sections of the African society through our initial campaign. Though our initial campaign must be directed towards peasants and workers and members of cooperative movements where revolutionary awareness is high. So this is another thing that comes from the socialist people. Like, they believe the peasants and workers and all that are the most revolutionary. And like maybe, who knows? But again, I think there's something more to what would make us want to be free, and it might not be necessarily occupation driven. But the structure of AAPRA and AACPC, the political military organization of our United Revolutionary Front, will be animated by the peasants, the peasants, B, the workers in industries, mines, and trade, C, the enlightened elements of the petty bourgeoisie, the revolutionary petty bourgeoisie, some of whom will help to organize and canalize the people's insurgency against imperialist aggression into a real revolutionary struggle. D, students. E, certain anti-imperialist elements of the local bourgeoisie, the patriotic bourgeoisie. F, the cooperatives and farmers movements. G, nationalist, bureaucratic bourgeoisie. H, revolutionary outsiders, those elements who have disassociated themselves from the conservative ideology connected with their class origin. These are usually young men and women with a certain educational background. Some of the forces may be temporarily oppressed and weakened, and their level of economic, cultural, and educational developments may be heterogeneous. So let me close this thing right here. Yes, it's our battle we gotta do. We gotta start making moves. You gotta start making moves. That's it. Alright, the peasants. Our liberation struggle must be based on the immense revolutionary potential of the peasantry, because the peasants form the overwhelming majority of our population, because the revolutionary units live in the midst and depend on their assistance to survive and on their active participation in order to develop. So he's actually talking about in Africa. In Africa, you want to get the people who own the land, the people who are farming the land. If you have guerrillas, understand that unless they're living in the forest or something, which they can, but unless they're living in the forest or something, you want an agricultural supply. And even if you're living in the forest, people will bring you agricultural supplies. But you want an agricultural supply, and that's why you want to be able to revolutionize the peasants. And that's his, Wazungu term, but basically the farmers. You want to be able to, the agricultural workers. You want to be able to revolutionize them. So that's one thing we have to think about, especially when we're training ourselves in political education and whatnot, is how to approach people, basically to, somehow exchange for their food, We must first make a careful investigation of the conditions of our peasantry. The traditional patterns, the winning over of the peasant sector is a fact of fundamental necessity. We must first make a careful investigation of the conditions of our peasantry, the traditional patterns and the relationships of production, and the basic problems of agricultural development. There is urgent need for A. An improvement of existing farming and irrigation, B. More widespread uses of fertilizers, C. A coordinated program of pest control, D. Greater research facilities, E. Technical training. In short, we are faced with 1. An educational problem, 2. A problem of capital investment, and 3. The need to rationalize the use of the existing means of production and to introduce new methods. So, and that's what I say, you need capitalism. You need capital investment for socialism in a sense, right? All right. Because it's like you can't afford the machinery. No individual can afford the machinery, so you depend on capital, and that's one of the contradictions, if you will. But whatever, not a contradiction, but it's just one of those things that you have to confront. The task of the revolutionary cadres is therefore not primarily to satisfy land hunger, but to awaken the peasants to the realities of their economic potential and to win them over to a new form of organization of agricultural production and distribution. These forces are from the bred masses, are an absolute majority, and must be matured, organized, trained, and drawn into the struggle against exploitation and poverty throughout the continent. So he's saying, look, you're gonna be hungry, you're gonna want food. So what we're gonna be doing is that while we're fighting, we're going to say which area can we introduce new fertilizers, technical training, and better machinery. You see? And so now that we do that, we can be compensated with food. It's about reciprocity. You really just want food, but you're not going to get it at the barrel of a gun. You're not going to get it begging. You're going to get it because, hey, look, we actually have these techniques that we want to bring you, to increase the output of your farm, and in so doing, improve your livelihood, and then in return, you give us, we get food in exchange, or we get a fair trade, a fair deal in the food, Oh snap! Goss is here. Malone is here. Yes, this is why Sankofa is so important. Everything we need to know was already set down by our ancestors. Exactly. Central ownership of the means of production raises the risk of hazardous attack. You mean on the what does that mean? All right, so I don't know about my accent being nice, but I do like how I read. I think it's important for us to practice reading out loud, so that we're not stuttering while we're reading too much. I mean, I've stuttered sometimes, but I've seen people who've done worse. Rural proletariat and agricultural labor, who are the quickest to grasp the problems of the revolution and the inevitability of the struggle, are mainly those who produce such goods as cotton, sisal, cocoa, coffee, rubber, citrus fruits, etc. In other words, those employed within the orbit of international trade and industry. So international trade and industry, they know these are not the subsistent farmers. So the peasant would be the subsistent farmer. The rural proletariat, accordingly, would be the commercial farmer. Okay, so they're producing these things that are subject to the international market. So it is precisely in this sector that our agricultural workers are massively absorbed, and it is these workers who are in daily contact with modern economic realities and exploitation. They are a strategic link in the chain of exploitation in our materials and human resources, which are determined to break. The task will not be difficult, since agricultural wage earners, plantation workers, cattle farmers, African farmers working in a family or semi-cooperative system of agricultural production are the easiest to persuade that the ending of exploitation is the prerequisite of A. Modernization, accelerated development in agriculture, and B. Improvement of working conditions for all workers and peasants, and that conditions A and B are the necessary prelude to the industrialization of our territories and a full possibility of self-realization. So neo-colonialist control over the advanced sectors of production. It must be remembered, however, that imperialism in its neo-colonial stage, and particularly in Africa, draws the bulk of its profits from its grip over the advanced sectors of production. mining, manufacturing, commerce, retail trade, transport, and fisheries, either through direct control over open sea fishing enterprises or through indirect control over the production of ice, indispensable for the conservation of fish. So apparently these white people are actually in control of the production of ice. And so it's like, even if you were to fish a bunch of stuff, if you were trying to sell those fish anywhere, they would spoil before they reached without the production of ice. So that's something that, that's one of those technical skills that are advanced sectors that we should be on, but we're not. And of course, Nkrumah wrote this, I want to say 50 years ago, but, things are kind of the same. You know what I mean? Enterprises in the above-mentioned sectors attract about 90% of all Western capital invested in Africa and are therefore the main. So like 90% of all Western capital invested in Africa are for these six. These six categories. Conversely, and are therefore the main areas of neocolonialist expansion. Conversely, imperialism is increasingly withdrawing from the agricultural sector, limiting its exploitation to indigenous elements. So that's the indigenous people are exploiting the agricultural sector. There's nothing magnanimous about the imperialist withdrawal from this sector. They are simply placing their stakes in the sectors best suited to their own interests. Indeed, although agriculture absorbs the majority of the African working population, one, the agricultural sector is in general not highly productive because modern techniques have not been widely applied. Two, the promotion of agricultural production requires heavy capital investment, which is recoverable only on a long-term basis. For example, irrigation schemes, the construction of training centers, use of fertilizers, purchase of agricultural machinery involve large capital outlay and a high degree of organization. And three, the unpopular equation, plantation equals settling equals colonialism, has remained anchored in the minds of too many progressive Africans for neocolonialists to venture back into agricultural exploitation. No foreigner can now afford to revert to the old pattern of rural slavery used in the time of old-fashioned colonialism. So he's saying that because our mindset is like, whoa, I ain't working on no plantation, that white people are just like, okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to make you miners. We're going to make you manufacturers, right? And then we're like, yeah, that's a good job. That's not no slave. But it's like, yeah, you're still getting pennies. And you're still not running the show yourself. You still got a master. You know what I'm saying? Alright, so in certain states where no revolution took place to make a clean sweep of the settlers, as in Algeria, foreign settlers are either trying to reorientate their activities into sectors which are less dangerous from a psychological point of view, or are trying to sell their plantation to high-ranking nationals in order to retire abroad with their ill-gotten fortunes. The explosive situation existing in some African countries where the crucial problem of land still under foreign control has remained unsolved is in the post-independence period is enough to discourage any enterprise in its direction by new-style colonialists. The present nature of imperialist objectives shows up clearly in the fact that over two-thirds of the capital injected into Africa by the major capitalist countries, USA, Great Britain, West Germany, France, Italy, and Japan, and look at that, he said Japan, major capitalist countries, Japan, goes to South Africa, Rhodesia, and Katanga. This trend is not coincidental, nor is it due to any marked preference for the type of government in power in these territories. Western capital pours into them because they are the wealthiest mineral, industrial, and strategic nuclei on our continent. The second important magnetic pole for imperialist interests is northern Sahara, which is oil, gas, manganese, and iron. The remainder of Western capital is directed towards commercial business and various other projects where the line between orthodox procedure and corruption and subversion is almost impossible to draw. So yeah, so he's saying that most of the imperialists are focusing on the mineral-rich places. Katanga, if I'm not mistaken, is in the Congo. So let's see. Let us build friends. Okay. If a central party holds the means of production of wealth, manipulation, corruption, and a coordinated attack on the infrastructure becomes easier. Oh yeah. To that I want to say, you want to give a moral like what our ancestors did was a moral training, so that you don't have that corruption. Because the thing is this, that the workers at large can be corrupted, and we know this because the workers at large today are already corrupted. If A small number can be corrupted, a large number can be corrupted, probably more easily. You know what I mean? Like probably more easily than a small number, only because because we know it. We already know that's the case. And then the other thing is that we know that you can't expect the masses to be on top of things. Like it's just like with regards to the professional leadership. Sorry, with regards to the professional military, you want a professional political class. You know, in order to be able to see things more broadly and also to constantly be training and committed to uh, the revolution or what's at stake. You know, so Empower, I see you. Shame we can't quote in this section, but I'm here catching up in comments, RD, and comments and seeing some nice stuff. Okay, so anyway, peace over long. But yeah, that's the thing that I wanted to say to the brother Mchaka is that like we have to realize that a professional political class centered on Ma'at is not something that's going to be corrupted or corruptible. But if we just open it to the masses, yes, if the masses are centered on Ma'at, that's one thing. But we can't really expect the masses to be centered on Ma'at. Like you cannot expect the masses to be centered on Ma'at because because the reality of Africa is that you're probably going to have a diverse population, or you're going to have a population that's moving, going forth, or that's freely influenced by the enemy. Unless you're going to shut down the internet and shut down, repress knowledge and repress, unless you're really like on the dictatorship path, you're going to have a masses who are going to freely engage the enemy. And the reality is that you can freely engage the enemy and be convinced. Like with Nkrumah, he's convinced of the nonsense that white people are saying. By the way, make sure everybody likes. Likes. It's not that many people watching, but But the thing is this: that with Nkrumah, like the enemy is actually really convincing. Wazungu is like a master of deception. It's no joke. Wazungu can trick a lot of people. The goal then is that you would have certain people in positions of power who are just less susceptible to being tricked, and are being paid to not be tricked, paid to keep up with the ancestors, paid to, so that's like the big difference. That's what I would say to that. It's like yes, ideally you think that the masses, but unless you have some really rigorous, unnecessarily rigorous education for the masses, unless you're, like if somebody's bound to be, as we say, the agricultural worker, or a fisherman, and we're just like, okay, before you're a fisherman, we want you to have this rigorous education. We want you to read 100 books on political theory and Pan-Africanism and how governments work and how to, we want you to just do some real study. We're going to test you and frequently test you and catch up with you frequently. And the dude's just like a fisherman, and we're like, hey, we're going to put the government of the state in your hand because we need all people involved, all hands on deck, all of that. It's like, it's just excessive, and it's a waste of state resources. It's a big waste of state resources insofar as you could just have certain individuals, you could have a hundredth of that individuals, or even a handful of individuals who go through that rigorous training and then run the state accordingly, but they go through that moral education, and then that whole corruption, the whole manipulation thing isn't on point. Because again, to protect against manipulation and corruption will be incredibly costly on a large scale. If you have a population of 500 million people, that's saying, you're going to have to print 500 million books, or 500 million, ebooks, and be on top of 500 million people to read them and all that. And it's like real talk. I understand, or I want our people to understand that it's not about the masses having that knowledge. Sometimes the elites should have that knowledge, but the masses don't need to have that knowledge. And we notice among every people in the world that like even the white people who are in charge and all blah blah blah, their masses are kind of, I mean, I wouldn't want them, I wouldn't want our masses to be as dumb as white masses, but their masses are dumb, and yet they can still hold power because their leadership, their elite, are very well informed, relatively, you know. And so it's the same with us. It's like we have to focus on our elite, our leadership, our rulers being well informed, well balanced in our asili, you know, so that even if the masses, you know, because the thing is just like I say, you know, on some level, you can have a black person serving in Europe, you know, or trading with Europe, and then he falls for a white girl, you know, and you'll have this in the human experience. You'll have this, and if he does, then like who cares? It's not a loss to you. It's a loss if the leadership falls for a white girl, but it's not a loss for our people, our masses. So that's what I wanted to say. Gotta be careful. All right. The second important magnetic, the remainder Western capital possible to draw. The huge turnover figures of important trading firms implanted in Africa are expressed in the soaring graphs published in company reports. Sorry, SCOA, UTC, UAZ, PZ, etc. The reason here is that the opportune relaxation of the colonial grip has enabled many Africans to quench freely an increasing craving for capitalist habit-forming consumer goods introduced by colonialism as the status symbols of civilization and modernity associated with the prestige of political power. We may therefore conclude that it is correct as ever to base our struggle on the mobilization of the majority, the workers and peasantry. 2, we must at the same time penetrate the very heart of imperialist and neocolonial centers of exploitation by winning the workers to our side. We must have every inch of our land and every one of our mines and industries. So say that again though. We must have every inch of our land and every one of our mines and industries. Workers in the mines, industries, and trade. The industrial proletariat is indispensable to our struggle because workers in the sector are the essential labor force for the continued existence of neocolonialism. Neocolonialism continues on the back of these workers in the mines, and you have to understand, a lot of times these are children. The coltan in your cell phones is being mined by children who are in harmful employment and are dying in these mines, suffering respiratory problems in these mines. Okay? Children are doing this. You know, and we should be ashamed of ourselves as a continent, as a people. We should be ashamed of ourselves that part of the technology being used right now for me to speak to you is fueled on child slave labor. Good, beautiful black children being wasted in mines. Short lifespans. No literature, no literacy, and it's like we have to say to ourselves, look, because that's part of the reason why I even said, look, we need Africa united we need Africa, we need Pan-African nationalism. We need this because of what's going on in the Congo, Katanga, what's going on there. The human lever of the economic and social revolution, which is the constructive aspect of our war against imperialism. You know, the importance of winning over the worker is the key sector of our economy as integrating them as powerful forces in our revolutionary struggle is recognized and accepted by all genuinely progressive Africans. Yet in recent years, a certain amount of confusion has been caused by the spread of myths denying the existence of a working class in Africa. Those who spread these myths are generally African political personalities, often in government circles, who have the opportunist, petty bourgeois outlook and a deep-seated fear of the masses. It is not that they are blind to realities, but they deliberately ignore the existence of a social force whose development might lead to the destruction of the very clique from whom they receive income and privilege. And look at that, Nkrumah saying privilege, man. All right. Even before the advent of puppets, the imperialists did all in their power to avoid the emergence of an organized African working class. For a long time, the French prevented the workers in their colonies from forming trade unions. The English integrated TUC advisors into their colonial administration to set up trade unions tailored to Western capitalist standards. So, and that's something you already know, that, you know, sometimes they gun down unionists. You know, they gun down unionists, and that's what the imperialists do. They don't care. They don't value your life. They value the wealth of your continent. And so yes, they're going to fight you. They're going to fight you. If you're talking about liberating the country or the continent, they're going to fight you. And Ascari, the puppets, are going to fight you. You know, when I touch down in Africa, you know, if I'm not quiet, they're going to fight me. And not just fight me. I'm talking like, you know, you might see in a newspaper, bullet through this head. You know, you might see me hanging from a tree or my head on a pike. You know what I mean? But that's the reality of like what is going on in this world, and you have to say to yourself, look, like that's like we are just we're humans. We're humans and we kill each other. You understand? Like that's what we do. We survive, we live, we reach a certain age, and sometimes we don't reach a certain age, and we kill each other. You know, when you have these kids in the mines getting this coltan, we're killing them slowly. You know, and we're killing them slowly so that some crackers can just, you know, sit around and, hey, what you doing? Oh, nothing. What are you doing? You know, that's what these black youth are dying for. You know, and maybe some white boy is gonna be like, hey, you know, these kids are dying, and so some black guy can read a book, you know, over the, like, you know, the point being that, you know, like, expect, you know, value life as you have it now, but understand that it could come to a hard, horrific end. It could come to an end, but while you're living, you have to work towards Africa being free. You know, and if not all of Africa, somewhere, some Africans, something being free. Work to liberate something. You know, just something. Just and if enough of us do this, yes, like the future is bright. The future is bright. And if we don't, look here, the planet is dying. The planet itself is going to get rid of us. Okay? The whole of us. And we're going to suffer through it. We're going to suffer through it. Already, Africans are fighting over a decline in water supplies, a decline in wildlife. 50% of wildlife has disappeared in the recent years. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying, I don't know the exact number, but like a lot of endangered species have come about. A lot of extinct species. Like, white people are killing this world, and we're just kind of sitting back on our hands saying, you know, I don't want to die by a bullet. You know, you should look at, like, you look at every man that you know, and I said man in particular. You look at every man you know and say, you know what, I'm okay with this man dying if he's fighting. You know, if he's fighting, and if you're a man, you look in the mirror and say the same thing. You know what I mean? You say the same thing. Later, the puppets and their local reactionary partners continue to refuse to recognize the existence of the exploited classes which have emerged in African society in order to avoid exposing the class of exploiters of which they themselves were the leaders. They refuse to see the workers because they believe they can thus prevent the workers from seeing them and tearing them to pieces. But not even a so-called elite can bury its head in the sand for very long. Consequently, African reactionaries were soon compelled to make certain concessions to reality to avoid being engulfed by the rising tide of discontent. They resorted to the well-known ritual of setting up puppet trade unions to stifle the workers' movement by creating 1. Employers' trade unions, 2. Clerk trade unions, controlled by a swarm of white-collared employees who are not directly involved in the productive process and who poison the workers' movement, and 3. Unions dominated by corrupted leaders. The high degree of attention paid to the workers by neocolonialists indicates their crucial importance in the revolutionary struggle. They are paid comparatively high wages and led to believe that if the imperialists withdraw, they will be unemployed. In some cases, they are given houses at reduced rent and amenities to keep them happy while they are being exploited and to lull them into a false sense of security and well-being. The object of this attention is to instill into them the idea that they have something to gain by a continuance of the imperialist way of life and everything to lose by a revolution. This kind of indoctrination makes the task of drawing the workers into the ranks of our liberation struggle somewhat difficult, but then nothing is easy in a revolutionary situation, and already hundreds of thousands of African workers are aware of their true position and are ready to act. So he's saying, look, yeah, It's going to be hard. It's going to be complicated, but you gotta like whatever, you know. You know, as I said in the other one, suck it up. So let's go. He's going. Neocolonialist attempts at integration. So probably the most insidious of the enemy's attempts to win the African workers to their side is to campaign uh, to integrate them into the neocolonialist capitalist system of exploitation. This is the so-called solution of Africanization, made palatable by the promise of wages and salaries equal to those of foreign workers. So again, you know, you have to realize that the white boy got money, and he had loyalty based upon money. So it's upon us, it behooves us to not also have money in that sense, you know, or resources or something to compensate people for their loyalty. You know, at the end of the day, that's what you. So when we conquer these zones, we're supposed to set up industries, right, that can employ people well. Okay, that can employ people well, and in so doing, make for what we need as a people. What we need as a people. So wages and salaries equal to those of the foreign workers. So the main problem for our workers is not that an African earns 3, 4, 5, or 10 times less than his Western counterpart, but that he, like they, is exploited and will never be able to achieve full self-realization within the imperialist capitalist system. So again, you see what I'm saying? Like we're saying, hey, the foreign worker who's making 10 times as much is also exploited. And you know, in some regard, you might say, yeah, okay, but this is a thing that we as like, because we're a lot of us are influenced by these socialists. So the thing that we mistake is that people aren't gonna buy this. Like this is partly central to the whole why are Africans on the continent moving to moving into diaspora communities, you know, and it's like because they can get paid 10 times as much doing the same work. You know, it's upon us to develop on the continent such to the point where we can pay 10 times as much doing the same work. You know, or 15 times as much doing the same work. You understand? And then people will say, why are you immigrating to, let's say, Ancobia? Like, why are you immigrating to Ancobia land? Why are you integrated there? Like, why are you immigrating there? And it's like, oh, because I get 15 times as much. You know, because that's the thing you have to understand. Like, even white people would say, I'm going to go teach English in China because they pay a lot more. You understand? It doesn't even matter. Like people do economic migration. Alright, far from constituting a serious challenge to the system, Africanization harmonizes and attempts to rationalize it so that its running is more smooth and efficient and therefore more profitable to the enemy. The truth behind the salaries. So in South Africa, where African workers live in conditions close to slavery, the fascist racist regime is obliged to give its mining and industrial workers comparatively better salaries than those usually paid in the rest of Africa for a similar job. However, this fact does not prove that workers have something to gain from the apartheid regime, or that they occupy a privileged position in relation to the rest of the African workers. On the contrary, such salary scales are a clear indication that the enemy cannot do without this labor force, and this is true both in the colonized and neo-colonized territories in Africa. For example, if all African miners in South Africa withdrew their labor, the country's economy would be paralyzed and political power within their grasp. Such is the potential and as yet unrealized strength of our workers. So I'm going to try to take a picture of this and post it in the Discord or on my Twitter. I should tell you guys that I have a Twitter if you don't know. I have a Twitter, and let's see. I don't know how to. I want to try to take a picture. Okay, here. So I want to try to take a picture. I'll probably post it later because I can't do it right now. But this is important for our people to understand that, you know, because right now South Africa is going through this power. Now the only question is, economy is paralyzed, and political power is within the grasp. In the grasp of whom? You see, because right now South Africa's already has this trouble. Like, you know, you fast forward 50 years, South Africa has the trouble where the political power is subordinate to these interests right here. So again, you want to radicalize Sorry. I mean, I had some good food today, so you know, some good Haitian food. You know. All right. So anyway, but you want to radicalize our people, and not just like I said. I don't want to just do socialism, but it gives you a better understanding. This gives you a better understanding why parties like the EFF and BLF in South Africa are doing what they're doing, and this is why I don't personally, I wouldn't actually attack. I mean, I used to attack them about their socialism, you know, but I don't think I'll try to stop that, because a part of it is just to wrestle the power structure from the petty bourgeoisie puppets. Okay? And yeah, I'm using the socialist term, but from the Askari. Okay? You want to wrestle the political regime from the Askari, and for that, kudos to this brother. Kudos to the, I'll give the socialists that. I'll give them that. Let's keep going. At present, it might appear that African workers are only ready to strike for increases in salary. If this is the case, it can only mean one of two things. One, they are unable to attempt any other form of action in the conditions prevailing at their place of work. And two, or they are not yet aware that there is something else to be done. The first alternative is due to measures taken by the enemy. The second is a result of both enemy measures and revolutionary deficiencies. The enemy both needs and fears the African labor forces, and therefore does its utmost to arrest the intellectual and professional development of the workers by keeping them in the unskilled category for life. And B, African revolutionaries have not yet been successful in explaining to the workers the crucial part they can play in the liberation struggle. And so this is really important too, that when you do a worker strike, the employer kills you, one, or fires you, two, or finds scabs, or three, finds scabs as they call them, which is temporary workers who might be paid a little more or whatever, but so on and so forth. A part of this also would mean that you want the highly skilled workers to participate in the boycott too, but of course they keep you, the African, unskilled. You understand? So that's partly why they would keep you unskilled, so that they don't have to, they can replace you very easily. They can replace you very easily, and so that's another thing. It's like one of the things you have to realize is that the enemy, even though you're working, the enemy is working too. You know what I mean? The enemy is working. So if you're burning the midnight oil, the enemy is burning the midnight oil. Chances are the enemy is also burning the midnight oil. So, but that means that you gotta burn the midnight oil. Okay, you gotta burn the midnight. You gotta think, and the reality is that another thing that you have to consider is that you might have to this is tough. This is a tough world, but it's not a game. It's warfare. It's warfare. It's not a war game. It's warfare. So in certain extreme cases, the purely economic form of struggle has definite positive aspects. But it is becoming increasingly true that in Africa, particularly in the zones of intensive mining and industrial activity, this form of struggle can only achieve very limited results and does not match up to the urgency of the situation. Being forced to abandon working sites so strategically and economically indispensable to the enemy cannot be a solution for the workers. But the presence of African workers inside neocolonial strongholds opens up interesting possibilities for a quick and thorough liquidation of the enemy. It is essential for the leaders of the revolutionary liberation movement to 1. Bring the truth out into the open, 2. Establish close and active contact with the African workers, 3. To link the African workers movement organically to the struggle by determining specific intermediary objectives so that whatever progress is achieved in the worker struggle will mean progress in the whole of the imperialist movement and the promotion of socialism on a continental scale. So the failure of imperialist tactics. So to prevent the workers from realizing their true position and to avoid the immense strength of the African workers from being unleashed inside the strongholds of neocolonialism, the enemy does its utmost to disintegrate the workers' movement, rendering it spineless and isolating the workers from the realities of African society, and above all from the revolutionary movements during the whole of the time they spend on the worker site. However, the enemy can never manage to cut them off completely, but one of the essential features of African labor is its mobility. Alright? So I just want to read that again. This is the failure of the imperialist tactics. True position, African workers from being unleashed inside the strongholds of neocolonialism. Yeah. So when the workers on the working site, the imperialist tries to isolate them from revolutionary movements and isolate them from the African society at large. So they might, house you somewhere and so on and so forth, and you're not engaging, you're not seeing the masses of toil. You're kind of whatever. But again, even those kind of stuff are not gonna like it's tough. It's tough. Again, this is warfare, but this is a good book. This is a good book. I'm glad that I'm reading it. Because I'm saying to myself, this is a good book. But let's keep going. The workers' movement and revolutionary strategy. Even in territories under intense enemy control, no worker in the modern economic sector, one, is totally independent from the broad masses, and two, or permanently established on his working site under enemy surveillance. So you're not always under enemy surveillance. Inside enemy strongholds and in key positions, African workers remain part of a vast mobile force. And this was written 50 years ago, so you might be under surveillance right now. Sure, I got a camera on me right now. But bing. Okay. All right. Inside enemy strongholds and in key positions, African workers remain part of a vast mobile force. They come from the reserves, villages, rural areas, and neighboring territories to work for a stipulated period of time in the factories, mines, plantations, harbors, or transport centers. Once the contract is terminated, they return to their homes either permanently or to stay for a while before once again setting out to obtain work. The permanent mobility of the African labor force was encouraged and even deliberately organized in places by the enemy in order to avoid confrontation with the corporate and fully constituted African proletariat. But this very mobility has proved of greater value to the revolutionary movement. Mobile workers establish an active liaison between the rural population and the centers of neocolonialist strength. They penetrate the innermost strongholds of the enemy and are becoming qualified to take them over. Therefore, if our revolutionaries are faced with major difficulties in their attempt to re-educate and organize the workers on the working site, they must seek their 1. Original point of departure, 2. Transit points. It is at the point of departure and along the lines of transit that the political education must be emphasized. Once the workers' trajectory has been determined, mobile teams specialized in propaganda work and in political agitation may even infiltrate into the circuit, enabling revolutionaries and revolutionary ideas to penetrate the very bloodstream of the enemy's economy. So you can look at this. This is chart 8. So he's saying, look, so basically what he was saying was, you want to revolutionize the worker, understanding that the worker goes back to his home village, so you revolutionize him there, or her, right, him or her, there, and then, or in addition, you can revolutionize them on the transit site, so where they may go to reach their place of employment, and therefore be able to revolutionize the workers at the job itself that you may not necessarily be able to get into. Because again, they're not keeping them into a situation. So this is the socio-economic pivot, movement of the working people, throwing permanent contact with rural community. That's back and forth, whatever. Small-scale agriculture under familial or semi-cooperative system of production. And you see the agricultural proletariat is acting with this, and they're also engaging the industrial worker, who is the workers in commerce, who's engaging them. African workers overseas might not necessarily be engaging them. Fishermen might not be engaging, but the miners, the transport workers are going back and forth with the small-scale agriculture, the rural farmers, if you will, the subsistence farmers. Alright, so therefore the integration of the workers in the revolutionary struggle may be achieved through various means and at different levels, methods and arguments varying and at different levels, varying according to the conditions and circumstances. Any action taken by the workers to advance their position is an integral part of our revolutionary struggle. For example, in an enterprise under foreign capitalist control, whenever the workers claim a rise in pay, an enterprise under foreign capitalist control, whenever the workers claim a rise in pay, and in an enterprise under indigenous capitalist control, whenever the workers go on strike, in a nationalized or state enterprise, whenever the workers demand better working conditions or rebel against an inefficient or corrupt administrator. So these isolated battles must be fought as part of the great revolutionary liberation struggle and within the framework of our political military organization, AAPRA, AACPC. So the role of students, so the youth belong to the revolution. Okay, our universities, colleges, schools, in enemy held and contested zones can become centers of revolutionary protest. Students should establish close links with the workers and provide the spark needed to set in motion demonstrations, strikes, boycotts, and armed insurrection. Effective student-worker cooperations can paralyze a reactionary power structure and compel change. In liberated areas, students must constantly guard and revitalize the revolution. On our youth depends the future of Africa and the continent's total liberation and unity. Right? The nationalist bourgeoisie. The anti-imperialist elements of the local bourgeoisie form a relatively small, though important part of our liberation movement, particularly in the contested zones and in areas under enemy control. They are, for example, often in positions to undermine the puppet regime by exposing its imperialist masters and by supporting anti-imperialist movements. Their social position and their genuine patriotism will command respect, but at the same time they may be thought to be armchair revolutionaries, since they represent a privileged sector of the population known to be out of sympathy with our socialist objectives. This should not discourage our revolutionary cadres from drawing them into the mainstream of our movement, since they can be of inestimable help in achieving our first two objectives of liberation and continental unity, and many of them may, in the course of struggle, become convinced of the need for socialism. So he's calling some people armchair revolutionaries, you know? All right. The bourgeoisie. Of course, I'm not bourgeoisie, so in case anybody thought that was a joke. All right. Revolutionary outsiders. So these, and of course, this is a couch. Okay. All right. Revolutionary outsiders. These include Africans who have disassociated themselves from the ideology connected with their class origin. 2, men and women of African descent living overseas. 3, foreigners who for various reasons have become interested in the African Revolution and wish to take an active part in the revolutionary struggle. There is room for all these people in our great struggle, for our objective remains the same throughout: to mobilize all the human force at our disposal in order to create a decisive, revolutionary, flexible, and multiform striking force. So the role of women. The women of Africa have already shown themselves to be of paramount importance in the revolutionary struggle. They gave active support to the independence movement in the various countries, and in some cases, their courageous participation in demonstrations and other forms of political action had a decisive effect on the outcome. They have therefore a good revolutionary record and are a great source of power for our political military organization. Maximum use must be made of their special skills and potentialities. So that's another screenshot right there. Actually, no, that's a little bit. You guys understand. First, it is necessary to examine the nature of the African woman's resources in terms of her revolutionary struggle, and then to determine how they can be best used and developed. The following is a proposed questionnaire of some essential points to be studied by our revolutionary cadres concerning the position of women in African society. 1. In statistical and qualitative terms, how has the African woman assimilated the twofold experience of our traditional communistic society? That is, how does she stand in relation to the Euro-Christian experience of colonialism and neocolonialism, and to the Islamic experience? You know, that's an interesting question. So, number 2, what is the nature of her links and her dependence on the imperialist oppressor? How can these links be used to the advantage of our revolution? Sometimes these links are predominantly economic. For example, in the relationship between the super mammies and the foreign trading firms. I've never heard that word in my life. All right. In other cases, the links may be purely personal. Prostitution in the colonial and neo-colonial context combines personal and economic dependence on the moneyed class with political links in the form of espionage and collaboration. Okay. So so that's another thing. So prostitution, he's saying prostitution can be used as a form of espionage. Okay. And I mean, it was the case with the Kenyan, the Mau Mau Revolution. It's the case in that book, The Spook Who Sat by the Door. It's interesting. I mean, it's like, that's espionage. You know, espionage is like that. It's like, the reality is that if somebody's going to do that, you know, then use it to your advantage. It's just, you know. I mean, you guys can tell me. You guys can say. Let me see how much. Yeah, I'm trying to read this whole thing, and it's actually kind of big. Shoot. All right. It's taking me forever. All right. To what extent is the African woman's revolutionary role of a prolongation, a modification, or a total departure from her traditional communalistic milieu and her duties, rights, and general position? How does it affect her subjective view of emancipation and happiness? Okay. Okay. 4. To what extent did she formally take part in productive work? 5. Is she entitled to the fruits of her labor? In what proportion? 6. How far is the practice of polygamy synonymous with feudalism? And to what extent does this practice mean that the African woman is exploited? 7. In which specific case can it be said that women in Africa are exposed to a twofold exploitation as workers, class exploitation in the modern sense of the term, and as women? In the case of each socio-ethnic group under analysis, the final ratio of the positive answers to the negative ones will determine the nature of the efforts to be made to fulfill the final objective, which is the same throughout Africa, the revolutionary mobilization of African women. So women in enemy-held zones. Women in zones under enemy control must participate fully in the work of political education and organization. The influence of women over the youth of the country and the fact that they are the wives, sisters, mothers of future freedom fighters must be utilized to the full by the revolutionary cadre. The degree of country's revolutionary awareness may be measured by the political maturity of its women. They are in a particularly strong position to infiltrate the enemy ranks, since they can exploit this lack of austerity, the mercenary state of mind, and the feeble sense of purpose, which are characteristic of the counter-revolutionary soldiers. So this is actually pretty interesting. I don't know if you guys know this. There was a music video that came out, I think today or some other day, and in behind enemy lines, okay, behind enemy lines, and yeah, it's like it would not be much if not for the fact that it was a craze and it was trending and it was going. I mean, I had it muted already, so I didn't really catch it. But people were engaging one another around the situation, around the thing, and a lot of people were just kind of sympathetic to this idea of, essentially, like essentially women just bragging about how well they do, sexually, and that's like again, the degree of a country's revolutionary awareness may be measured by the political maturity of its women. And the reality being that, and I mean, obviously, some people would say, a lot of people would say, hey, look, that doesn't have anything to do with my political maturity. I could do these two things, and it's true you can do those two things. But what we have to understand is that political maturity for us is not protesting; it's armed struggle. You understand? And we don't talk about it. But that's what it, and that's the reality, that we are in enemy held zones. A lot of the enemy held zones, they are not discussing armed struggle. Like, in fact, a lot of people are not discussing armed struggle, and unfortunately, what we have is a whole most all the conversation is fundamentally expanding the welfare state. Or as Nkrumah was saying earlier, increasing salaries and increasing the social network, the safety net. That's most all the conversation. That is political immaturity. Or even, hey, stop the police from beating me, or respect my life, That's not maturity. That's not like a revolutionary awareness, measured by its women. So it's like, yes, you can do both, but you're not doing both. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and neither are the men. So that's really something that important to understand too. That's like, and really you got to highlight that latter part, that although you can be measured by the women, like you're gonna measure it by the women, but you have to realize that the men are not even on their game. Like if you measure by the men, they're also slacking big time. Women in the bases and in liberated areas. So the majority of women in these areas, particularly mothers and older women, can ensure the continuity of the consolidation process and the growth of self-sufficiency and preparedness, while the men within the action units remain essentially in preparedness for war. Do you understand? So again, he has that same gender division I was talking about. Their main task inside the liberated zones where creative work can begin is to ensure self-sufficiency, stability, and resistance on all levels. The training of women. If they satisfy the physical, social, and ideological recruitment standards determined by the Commission of Control and Recruitment of AAPRA, women may join the training centers on the same basis as men and be eligible for the same responsibilities and authority. They will receive similar political, military, and social training as men, the courses being adapted to their capacities and physical strength. Comparatively, more emphasis will be placed on yeah, so even though, so that's what I'm saying. Like real life is that if a woman were to say, I want to fly an airplane, I don't want to, I don't care to have kids, I don't want to do it, I just want to fly an airplane. Yeah, you would give her an airplane. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like nobody cares. Like nobody's really like, oh my gosh, no, you can't. You're a woman. I wouldn't like if she's really like dead set on the airplane. Then so like the issue would be if all the women were like that. Then it would kind of be an issue because it's just like, okay, well then, like how are we gonna have children? You know what I mean? Like how are we gonna have a future? But like if there was exceptional like it's about rules versus exceptions. It's not rules versus exceptions. But I mean, there's workarounds for that. It's just like this is just, and again, this is just my thoughts. Dang, one of these comments. So yeah, I guess they censored the N word. Uh, let's just try not. I mean, I know you're referencing the poem though, so I got you. And Nkrumah had a well thought out workout strategy to destroy the imperialists, and still very drawn to that. Exactly. That's why it's good that we're reading it. It's good we're reading it. And I know you're referencing the poem, so that's cool. But YouTube was trying to censor it, and I don't blame it. You know what I'm saying? But I got it's a poem though. All right, propaganda techniques. The following task, more emphasis will be placed on propaganda techniques. So the following tasks can be usually fulfilled by women in these bases. So he's saying, look, women are going to be having the same training as men, but they're going to have more emphasis on this political instruction. Propaganda techniques. The following tasks can be usually fulfilled by women in the bases: the production and reproduction of leaflets, the distribution of and explanation of newspaper, news sheets, slogans, and instructions to the local population, dramatization of repressive incidents, the organization of victims' funerals with a political dimension, demonstrations of passive resistance, the production of placards, banners, and other insignia, intelligence work, for example. Women, petty traders, and market women can use the mobility required by their trade as a cover for the carrying of messages, arms, and intelligence reports. You understand? So women run the markets already, right? And what you could do is you could just slip them because they're moving already. So let's say they're like, oh, I got to trade with Ibadan, right? Ibadan, right? We got to trade with Ibadan, right? Or Katanga. Let's go with Katanga because I know what it is. They got to trade with Katanga. They're going to Katanga, and then they have a meeting with somebody in Katanga and deliver the message. You get what I'm saying? But all right, interpreting and liaison duties. Women who can speak more than one language will be invaluable as interpreters and for the interrogation of prisoners. Administrative, judicial, and secretarial activities. For example, women should be trained to replace men in local government. Reliable and efficient secretaries will be needed to ensure the smooth running of the AAPRA, AACPC organization to keep records and carry out essential office work. This I don't know how women would take this, because what happened in the Black Panther Party was I think 60% of the party were women, and but a lot of times the men like took the spotlight and gave the women the grunt work, and so a lot of this does sound like the grunt work. I mean, obviously he said there's more emphasis, so I want to just clarify that maybe men are doing this and women are doing this too. And you see right here he says train to replace the men in local government, which is another which is not like necessarily grunt work per se, but it is something that I would have been cautious of saying something like this, but I mean I don't know how women would interpret this, because sometimes a lot of this political instruction, this propaganda, like to me it does sound like it would be more effective from women, only because I see women as having like better personalities. Just just having better personalities in that regard. Like just have better personalities overall. Softer, kinder, better voice, everything. Just more I would contrast. I would say men are like fire and women like water. And like that water is just good in the community. Whereas fire is like better outside the community. Like just better outside of the community. You know what I mean? Whatever. All right. B, education. A nursery and primary school should be attached to each production unit, workshop, or medical center organized by women. They will absorb the children of the women's workers, A, the children of the women's workers, B, AAPRA orphans and freedom fighters' children, and C, children of the local population. Trained infant and primary school teachers will be assisted by working mothers taking turns to help in the general duties of caring for the children. Likewise, each production unit should elect its literacy campaigning group to persuade adults to study after hours. Incentives may be usefully employed, and a moderate degree of competitiveness between the various groups will also help to encourage maximum effort. The close network of secondary schools, which it should be the ultimate goal of every liberated zone to possess, should be utilized for evening lectures and class discussions. Medical training. C. Medical training. Hospitals, first aid posts, infant and child welfare centers, and birth control clinics will be set up in the base areas and will be staffed largely by women. Nurses with suitable guerrilla training will be attached as regulars to the action units. D. Driving instruction. We cannot afford to waste a single fighting, land, or non-combat duties. Women should therefore be trained to drive the many different vehicles used within the AAPRA, AACPC organization, cars, lorries, jeeps, and so on. And of course, he wrote this during a time that maybe women weren't driving. I don't know. But I mean, it's not that unusual. E. The provisioning of AAPRA forces. 1. Food. In view of the increasing involvement of men in part-time or full-time guerrilla activities, the responsibility of producing and distributing sufficient food for all will belong mainly to the women. Interesting. In areas not yet liberated, freedom fighters and action units will encourage the local women to take over food production duties from the men, so that more local men can be recruited into permanent guerrilla force. And see, that's what I'm saying. Like, you want a separation. Like I said, man is primary protector, secondary healer. Woman is primary healer, secondary protector. So the food is a source of healing. You know, you'd want the men outside, the fire. You know, they're permanent guerrillas. You know, but you want the women inside, developing the food. You know, doing the espionage, that kind of stuff. You know, so that the men, because the thing is this, that you want the children to have a parent, at least one parent. And if you're gonna have the children have one parent, it should be the mother. I mean, of course, you know, you might be like, hey, but Oni, aren't you with your son predominantly? Yes, I am. And I'm saying that as somebody who's with his son predominantly. I'm saying, yeah, I actually do think women have a better personality with children, you know, and that's me saying that, and I have an alright personality, but you know, like, yeah, like women are just tops, you know, and I think the proverb goes, men are the fence and women are the garden. You know, the garden brings life. You know, I'm not saying men don't have any contribution in the life bringing thing, but we know women not only, like, it's not just, you know the act of procreation. She has that baby for 9 months, and then she's nursing that baby, you know, sometimes as much as 3 years. You know, she's nursing that baby sometimes as much as 3 years. You know, like sending her into the wilds, into the guerrilla, you know, hiding out for, you know, 7 years. It's not the same as, you know, this man who can, you know, come in, deposit his, you know, he can do his thing, then go out, and then she could now be in a community of women, you know, as opposed to, you know, like you send the women out in the garden, you know, whatever, and then the children come back to a community of men, you know, and you might be like, oh, let's just have it integrated, yeah, but it still doesn't make any sense. Why is that man there when he could be out fighting, you know? You know what I mean? Like, why is he there? If and then the thing is that the women, you know, could have their time together, you know, their organization together. They don't have to have like a dude who's sitting around like while his wife is out fighting for his liberation. It's just, you know, I'm not saying that the wife shouldn't be out there, but if the wife is there, then the husband should be there too. It just doesn't make sense that the husband would be sitting back. You know, farming, fishing, food stocking, and preservation will be increasingly done by women. Right? Interest in food preservation techniques and time-saving methods involves minimum expense should be encouraged. Dependence on provisions from external allies should be lessened to promote local qualities of autarky. The local population as a whole is the main provider of food, but since it is primary objective of guerrilla activities to absorb increasing numbers of local men into the action units, the women will remain as the only permanent full-time producers and distributors of food. Women is the basis and liberated areas will in the bases and liberated areas will set up permanent or mobile distribution centers, canteens, and people shops. They will supervise the rationing of scarce commodities and organize barter activities in regions where the use of the enemy's currency is barred. So you don't want to use the enemy's currency. So no dollars. Alright, 2. Clothing. Women will be trained to set up and operate workshops for the manufacture of uniforms, covers, canvas bags, shoes, and other equipment needed by the freedom fighters. So there was a discussion on Discord about, you know, women's and men's and like gender roles, and this was just an example of gender roles, and I feel like it's done right. I mean, some of it, like I said, some of it sound like a little bit like a grunt work, but you have to understand that it's a compliment. That men are doing something and women are doing something, and they're both doing something for each other, and they're both as necessary as the other. You know what I mean? They're both like they're codependent. It's not one is better than the other. It's not one is subjugating the other. It's they're both codependent. You know? D. Propaganda. Propaganda is a means of liberation, an instrument of clarification, information, education, and mobilization. It serves two different but essential functions in our war. 1, to subvert the enemy. 2, to awaken and mobilize our people. I mean, I had a definition of propaganda, but we'll just read because I can't remember off the top of my head. Propaganda to subvert the enemy. So, an indispensable preliminary to battle is to attack the mind of the enemy, to undermine the will to fight, so that the result of the battle is decided before the fighting begins. The Revolutionary Army attacks an irresolute and demoralized army. This type of propaganda must have 2 main objectives. A, to undermine the morale of non-African troops, exposing the injustice of their cause and the certainty of their defeat, and B, to encourage African troops who have been misled into fighting for the enemy to desert and join AAPRA. So you want to do 2 things with your propaganda. Undermine the morale of the white people, the foreigners, exposing the injustice of their cause and the certainty of their defeat. You say, look, you guys are going to lose, right? You guys are going to lose because you're terrible people. You're fighting for a terrible cause of exploiting our people. That's why you're going to lose. And 2, you want those Askari. You actually want those Askari. You want those people who are misled to fighting the enemy to desert and join your army. Obviously after you, go through and whatever, but you actually want, because again, remember the enemy is the Askari elite. Those are the main enemy. You have to focus. The main enemy is the Askari elite. It's not necessarily the Askari per se. And that's something that I want our people to understand, because I know, I have a good brother who's like, oh, I don't like this person, I don't like that person, I don't like this, this person's Askari, blah, blah, blah. They're not the problem. The problem is that you have the Askari are in leadership. You get the Askari out of leadership, and you get, our group is what we call the Oncobia. You want the Oncobia in leadership. Then you're good. Okay? Then you're good. But you have to take the state, because the thing is this: the masses might have the Askari, the masses might have the hybrids, the whites, the masses might have the bastards, the mulattoes, or whatever. The masses will have these people, or the masses will have the Oncobia, good people. The masses will have that, but what's important is who is in the leadership. It's just like in America. America has black people, white people, Latino people, it has all that, but white people hold the leadership. Okay? And because white people hold the leadership, that's how they maintain their power. Because the power of the state is in the state. You know what I mean? It's in the government. It's in this state power. You're talking about state power. They're collecting taxes to the point where they have $1 trillion budgets. $1 trillion budgets. Okay? At the hands of the white leadership. The white political leadership has trillions of dollars to disperse however they see fit. No overhead, because they are the leadership. Okay? So it's upon you to say, look, we need to, and the thing is this: in Africa, the elites have billions of dollars. They don't have trillions of dollars, but they have billions of dollars in their budgets to distribute however they want. And a lot of times how they want is to get foreigners to Like, come on. And then all we have to do is we have to get that state power. Get that state power. We don't have to fight our people on the masses level. If our people are confused on the masses level, that's fine. We just have propaganda to tell them, look, desert that and join us. Join the AAPRA. You know, so the main problem, and remember this too, that the AIPRP, the All African Revolutionary Party, is an organization today. So that's one of the organizations that you might want to consider. Like I said, I'm looking to start an organization myself, but I was finna write a book, like a handbook kind of, but this one looks so good that I'm like, I don't even need to. Alright, so the main problem in both cases is the difficulty of access or communication, particularly in enemy-held zones. Broadcast, the distribution of leaflets, and the holding of secret meetings and discussions are some of the methods most likely to produce results. In contested zones where revolutionaries operate more freely, all the various media of propaganda can be used: radio, television, cinema, press, exhibitions. And see, that's what I'm saying. Secret meetings in these enemy-held zones. So that's like if you're in the diaspora or whatever, you should be having secret meetings. You know, every Sunday. Well, not this Sunday because there's the Centennial Conference, but every Sunday I'm doing the African worship. You know, come through. Right now it's kind of like, you know, whatever. But like, come through, and just say, look, this is our secret meeting. You know what I mean? This is our secret meeting. Propaganda addressed to the people. The object of this propaganda is to 1. Denounce enemy action to the people. 2. Explain our cause. 3. Mobilize the masses so that they can break free from inertia and participate actively in the revolutionary struggle. Right? Propaganda is to 1. Denounce enemy actions to the people. Denounce enemy action. Explain our cause. Mobilize the masses so that they break free from inertia. Because the masses have inertia. And participate actively in the revolutionary struggle. So this is what we're supposed to be doing. I'm asking you today, how did you denounce the enemy? How did you explain our cause? That's the important one. How are you explaining our cause? Come on. This can be done on 2 levels. Theoretically, by accelerating the political awakening of the majority. Such an awakening often occurs in phases with the spread of A, the idea of an independent existence, anti-colonialism, nationalism. B, the idea that something is rotten, the awakening of neocolonialist exploitation. C, the idea that the situation can change, a conscious anti-neocolonialist attitude. D, the idea that the victory can be achieved only by action, the need to use force, the will to fight. On a practical level, by integrating our educational work within the political military organization and providing the actual means, AAPRA, AACPC, I know, I'll just skip over some stuff sometimes, and providing the actual means for carrying out our revolutionary aims. The suggested mechanism of our revolutionary struggle is illustrated in detail in Chart 5 of page 64. Page 9, Chart 9, page 97 is a simplified plan to show the nature and function of the triple chain of command. This is the triple chain of command. You have the political executive. So he writes from left to right, I guess. I don't know why. Alright, so anyway, political executive, A, village and rural areas, wards and townships. B, the partisan command, partisan between these two. And C, the military executive. So you have cooperation. So you don't really have military and political executive talking directly, and that's also important for like infiltration purposes, So maybe this will be, but that's a whole other thing. All right. Structure A. The political executive is to carry out intensive and extensive political education. This structure branches out to village level in the rural areas and to wards in the township. A will gradually provide the oppressed, exploited, and dissatisfied masses with political organization and education. People will thus become an informed, organized, and determined force. B comes into being as a result of the successful work achieved by A in coordination with the military executive, who specializes in the practical organization of revolutionary units. When action is initiated through the joint decision of the political executive, the military executive, and the Army General Staff, chain B assumes foremost importance. In the meantime, A pursues its organizational work and even reinforces it, since the action of B will often be carried out on the basis of preliminary work done by A, or on the strength of the information provided by A. By the way, is this thing big enough? Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. Which has certain so provided by A. A runs a system of propaganda and intelligence which has certain links with the B structure, though it never completely merges with it. In other words, various types of agents attached to A will never be known to B. B itself will have its own propaganda section and network of agents and are essentially operational character, and they will never be completely merged with A, or even with the equivalent bodies of C, the conventional armed forces. Therefore, if B reverses, the progress of B is not uniform. Certain guerrilla units are disintegrated. See what I'm saying? Like, you have to have preparation against your enemy trying to sabotage your hierarchy. You know? 4. B is forced by particularly unfavorable circumstances to go temporarily underground. The organs and cells of A will continue to function. This arrangement ensures that there will be no void, gap, or lapse in the revolutionary struggle. You know, and remember that A is the political executive. So you want the political executive to continue working, even if B has to go underground. You know, that is like not get captured. You know what I mean? Like, they're actively being pursued or actively being attacked, and they have to like go underground, which is hide. You know, or like to avoid being killed essentially. Okay, so once action is launched at the level of B and C, final victory is assured, and any retreat or loss will represent only a momentary ebb of the revolutionary wave. I feel like I'm too zoomed in, but whatever. To sum up, general preparations for action are made by the structure as a whole, and with chains A, B, and C coordinating with each other. Field work begins with A, which creates the conditions for the setting up of B, whose action is coordinated with C. A, B, and C constitute a huge, well-equipped, ideologically formed, and physically trained force, while the complex is initially set in motion by propaganda, A. So the type of propaganda needed is first and foremost organizational and ideological. It is therefore necessary to have a clear conception of the essential features of the propaganda we need, and a carefully selected and highly trained corps of agents to spread it. Our propaganda covers the entire field of revolutionary political education. It is a subjective vector of the struggle and is based on chains of constants, clarifying, denouncing, explaining. So again, clarifying, denouncing, explaining, solving. Clarifying, explaining, solving, mobilizing. This is how the propaganda works. You want to clarify, you want to denounce, you want to explain, you want to solve. Okay? Like, this is what we're not really being active with propaganda towards armed struggle in certain regions of this world, and because of that, it's a little bit trippy. I actually, one time there was this conversation. It was like right when COVID hit, and there was this conversation with a bunch of heavy hitters, and I didn't make it. I think it was on Zoom or something. So I was like, I'm not signing up for Zoom. I don't give a shit. Well, of course I'm doing it now, but whatever, right? And it's like everybody was just coming in to give you some religious rhetoric, oh, blah blah blah. Like, that's the issue. It's like your propaganda is weak right now. So of course, like nobody believes you're going to be a successful people because your propaganda is weak. Your propaganda is weak right now. Hold on a second. Let's see these comments. Yes, I agree with you, brother. There's no need to let European patriarchy get in the way of us becoming pragmatic about war. Women like Mama Africana. Wait, who's Mama Africana? I can't remember. Maybe something about women being more naturally nurturing. Yeah, exactly. That's what I feel. This is why unity is very important to the black struggle, because if we African people worldwide get together and pool our resources, it will be very easy to break this cycle. Yeah. I don't know why YouTube censored that. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, you didn't even say the N-word this time. But yeah, this is why unity is very important for the black struggle, because we have to pull our resources. That's it. I feel like because you said the N-word before, it was like, this dude's just gonna be saying the N-word a lot. Oh man, it sucks though, because we have a lot more pages, and I wanted this to be shorter, but I have to do it now. I have to do it today. So I understand if people can't stay, but I have to do it because tomorrow is this big conference in Centennial, and I can't do it tomorrow. And I want to upload at least my part, tomorrow. So, I can't. Like, I want the stuff to be back to back. You know what I mean? The stage reached in the struggle and the various circumstances conditioning it. Propagandists will also vary their techniques and themes Wait, sorry, did I skip anything? Oh yeah, mobilizing. The chain of command task does not vary, but different degrees of emphasis will be laid on one link in the chain rather than on another according to the level of the audience, national forces, or an international public, the specific situation it treats, the stage reached in the struggle, and the various circumstances conditioning it. Propagandists will also vary their techniques and themes to suit conditions for the various types of territory they are operating in. For example, a liberated territory where the people's power must be consolidated. B. A contested territory where the liberation movement must be supported, whose popular consensus must be achieved, and where the enemy must be demoralized. Or C. An enemy-held territory where it is essential to analyze and denounce enemy action, to show the breaks in his armor, to show why and how the people's forces must be organized and led to victory. Propaganda is spread through various media: radio, television, press, newspaper, pamphlets, leaflets, cinema, documentaries, newsreels, conferences, discussions, debates. Sometimes people say we don't like debates. Well, debates are actually good ways to have propaganda. F. Exhibitions using posters, slides, maps, charts, photographs, documents, and obviously you can use the internet. But media A, B, and C, D are generally more easily available in media in liberated zones and bases. C, E, and F are adaptable anywhere, provided capable cadres and appropriate means are available. The cadres can be trained in AACPC schools, so you're going to train people to do propaganda. The way of producing written propaganda change according to prevailing conditions. In areas where propaganda can be openly produced, printing presses are used. In the clandestine situation, portable duplicate machines with their compact accessories are suitable. There are two main kinds of clandestine publications. Leaflets, which deal with immediate, on-the-spot news and which spread slogans, rallying cries, and watchwords, or two, bulletins or newspapers. However, all propaganda media must convey the following idea: encouragement and information. 1. The struggle to the death against imperialism and neocolonialism is agent in all reactionaries. 2. African liberation and unity in the construction of a socialist society. 3. News of the problems, progress, and achievement of other socialist countries. So you want to talk about other socialist countries. That's what these people always do. But it's like I don't really care about Cuba. I don't really care about Cuba except for the fact that Assad is there. I don't really care about any other country, China or whatever, 4. Information about the progress of AAPRA forces. And 5. Practical advice and direction of all kinds for the fighters, workers, peasants, students, workmen, etc. Our propagandists must leave no problem untackled, no mistake unexposed. Truth must always be told. It is a proof of strength, and even the hardest truth has a positive aspect which can be used. Finally, our propaganda must promote self-induced morality, that is, self-reliance, self-education, self-discipline, and self-criticism. These qualities are basic in the revolutionary guerrilla fighter who is by nature training: A. Courageous, B. Skillful, C. Disciplined, D. Loyal. Our propaganda should undertake to illustrate and demonstrate the necessity of cultivating and consolidating these four qualities, not only subjectively, but scientifically. The revolutionary fighter must by the very nature of his highly specialized performance and the speediness of his action, adopt a scientific attitude in all fields. Superstition, magic, or rational beliefs, fatalism, and wishful thinking must be fought against. Suggestions for propaganda items: A. Blueprint for a monthly AAPRA review. B. Blueprint for a weekly of 1. The armed forces, 2. The military executive, 3. The political executive. C. Blueprint of a local revolutionary newspaper, a bulletin dealing with various themes. I don't know why he's saying blueprint, but okay. 1. The preliminary phase of the formation of cells. 2. The prelude to insurrection. 3. The unfolding struggles, victories and reverses expressed in figures, etc. D. Blueprint for leaflets, denouncing the enemy for political and economic reasons. 2. Addressing the various sectors of the population. Since intensive and extensive political education is pioneering work, preparing the ground for action, and constitutes the mainstay of action, the political activists in charge of propaganda must be well grounded in the rules and general principles of action. They must always bear in mind the essential objective: the takeover by the people and workers of 1. The civil administration, 2. The police, 3. The armed forces, and control over 1. Industry, 2. Agriculture, 3. Mining, 4. Transport. So he wants the people and the workers to take over the police, take over the civil administration, take over the armed forces. See, it's not defund. It's not defund, it's take over. You see? have control. It's not defund the industry or the agriculture. It's have control over the industry. You know, hence the need for the organization and mobilization of the workers, peasants, members of cooperatives, students, youth, and women, with specific rules, suggestions, and programs for each sector, and in accordance with the supreme objective, African unity and socialism. To conclude, propaganda, see that's a little typo, but propaganda must A. Prepare for the organization of popular insurrection, B. Spread dissension and subversion amongst the enemy's ranks and undermine morale, C. Expose the enemy's propaganda and attempts to misinform and mislead, D. Spread information, intelligence, etc. These basic tasks constitute the necessary prelude to action and the conditions for the smooth unfolding of our struggle and its final guarantee of success, the achievement of a union government of Africa. And this is really important, man. I tell you, you walk down the streets or whatever, you walk down around this area, and you see the European Jews are giving out free newspapers, okay? And I say to myself, look, I should be giving out free newspapers. If I don't have the printing, I don't have the publishing, I don't have that, but and it's not free, digital. And if it's 2 pages, 1 page, it doesn't matter. What you need to do is have regular propaganda. This is why I tell you, come to the Discord, and we have a conversation every week. Every Sunday. Obviously not this Sunday, but again, every Sunday, well, more or less, Sundays that can be worked. But every Sunday we say, look, this is African worship. Worship, like war, So let's say chapter 2, so basic principles and techniques of guerrilla warfare. So he's going to go into it. Oh, all right. So, come on, we're at the home stretch. I know, thank you for sticking with me. I know if you can't stick with me any longer, that's fine. Get online, share it, tell somebody else, come through, I feel like somebody took away their like. The sister that was the African ambassador. Oh yeah. I want to again. Yeah, I got you. I forgot. Yeah, Africana. Yeah. I used to think of her Chimbori. I think, right? You may not care, but for propaganda to spread, surely it has used certain luring tactics like comparing other countries the lay African may hold in regard. But for real though, we should only care how we look as Africans, not what the Chinese or. You're like. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. My thing is that I'm not a fan of socialism. Eurasianism in general, and because I'm not, I'm gonna typo, but because I'm not, it's like, I feel like you can, like a lot of it can distract and confuse us, because it's like when you see Vignette, like essentially what it does is it opens you up to foreign critique. It opens you up to foreign critique because the foreigners will say, no, you're not doing it right. Have you read Gramsci? Have you read like Trotsky? Have you read Trotsky? Have you what I mean? Like you're up for foreign critique. And it just becomes a distraction because they have a huge body of literature. But what we need to do is we need to liberate ourselves. And of course we don't want our people to be impoverished, but again we go back on our history, our story, and we'll see that we can provide for our people. We in ancient Africa, they set out meat on a particular stone, and it would cook in the night. It would cook during the day, like outside, natural sun, and then people who might have been down on their luck would have been able to eat. Like people, like foreigners, visitors, anybody. Anybody who wanted to eat could eat that night. Like they had their social net already. We don't need to force it. Force the Eurasian mythology. Force the Eurasian ideology. That's what I would say. But let's keep reading so we can actually finish. But again, thank you so much everybody for being here. Like I said, if you can't stay, just try to share it. Share it before you leave, and maybe somebody can replace you. Tag out. Pass the baton. All right. So the main part of the armed revolutionary struggle will be carried out by the centrally directed guerrilla forces. These will receive expert and rigorous training in base camps where the most modern fighting methods will be taught. The object of the final part of this handbook is therefore merely to provide a source of ready reference to some of the fundamental elementary principles and techniques of guerrilla warfare. A. Organization of a guerrilla army. A guerrilla army, although operating in small, widely dispersed groups, needs centralized direction and coordination. The following section must be established. 1. Recruitment. See this section on recruitment for AAPRA forces by 68 to 69. 2. Information. It is the task of this section to provide information about anything which may have a bearing on the struggle in a particular place. A. Inhabitants, those who are supporters of the revolutionary struggle, those who are enemies, and those who are indifferent. B. Physical features of the country, rivers, forests, mountains, valleys, etc. C. Strategical position of towns, roads, bridges, railways, airfields, etc. D. Attitudes of members of the armed forces and the police, behavior of freedom fighters, and of those who wish to join them. The information section is also responsible for 1. Drawing maps, 2. Espionage and counter-espionage, 3. Compiling and keeping dossiers on every freedom fighter in the zone, 4. Coding and decoding of messages, 5. Liaison and cooperation with information sections in other zones. 3. Operations. This section must authorize all operations by guerrilla groups. All chiefs of zones must be consulted so that tactics and every aspect of each operation can be discussed. The leader of the guerrilla group, which is to carry out the operation, will of course take part in the discussion. So you have operations. All operations by this section must authorize all operations by guerrillas. So he's talking about sections. Oh, okay. So you have different sections so you have an information section and a operations section. So a sabotage section. So this is one of the most important sections of guerrilla organization. The officer in charge must see that the most modern techniques and equipment are employed, that saboteurs are constantly active, and that the enemy's weak points are pinpointed and attacked and his information lifelines destroyed. 5. Instruction. The officer commanding this section will be in charge of the training camps for freedom fighters. He will also promote the education of peasants and supervise all other aspects of education in the region. 6. Armament. The section is responsible for the purchase and storage of all fighting equipment, arms, ammunitions, and for its distribution among the guerrilla forces. So again, I want to touch on this thing again, about this thing, the instructions part. You can have these people, the instructors, being paid all year round to receive people who are getting paid a good stipend to train in these armies. You understand? To train in these to become guerrillas, paid a good stipend and a good stipend afterward. And of course, being promised wages or being promised, a stipend to their families, in case they are they die in the line of duty. And you try to avoid that, obviously, but if it happens, you have to have a war chest. You have to have a war budget. You have to have a war resource, and this is what every religious group has. But you understand, the religious groups are just war groups, ethnic group. They're kind of like low key ethnic groups. You know what I mean? What we have to say to ourselves is, what is our ethnic group? What is our spirituality? Where's our spiritual system, and where is the war budget for our spiritual system? You understand? That's what it comes down to. Provisions. It is the task of the officer in charge of this section to see that revolutionaries are provided with adequate food, uniforms, and other supplies. 8. Health. Qualified doctors and nurses will generally be in base camps and hospitals and may not be able to attend guerrillas who fall sick or who are injured while on operational duties. All members guerrilla groups will receive first aid instruction in the training camps and will carry basic essential medical supplies. The officer in charge of the health section will ensure the guerrilla groups are adequately equipped medically and that all sick and wounded brought back to base areas receive prompt medical attention. He will also keep an eye on all health problems in his area, particularly concerning himself with the prevention of any epidemic spreading to the guerrilla forces. So, and you see that? Epidemic spreading, it's natural, things natural, for things to spread, disease to spread, 9. Propaganda. See Book 2, Chapter 1, Section D. It is particularly important in guerrilla warfare, where military action is usually unpublicized, that the propaganda section issues communique to spread news of revolutionary victories. This will raise the morale of revolutionary troops and demoralize the enemy. So you say, look, the revolution, because the white man's not going to tell you, not going to tell his colonized people when you have successes against him. You understand? He's not going to tell he's going to say, hey, look, these people are living like dirt. Look, we captured one of them and they're just hungry. You know? But you should show, no, look, like you advertising, look, we gonna compensate you. You know what I mean? You're gonna get a good stipend. Your family gonna get a good stipend. You know? And not just that, you know, look at this. We captured this. We captured that. We built a new hospital. We did this. These are the things that Pan-African, because one thing you have to understand that when people were fighting against Pan-Africanism, they said, what tangibles have you accomplished in the last 50 years? Like, you might have been good 50 years ago. You might have been great 100 years ago, right? But what have you done in the last 50 years? You know, and this is what you have not been on top of your propaganda to show what you've been doing. Because sometimes, you know, there was like this one brother who was like, hey, look, we did this, or we are active in this area. We're doing it. But nobody's singing your song. And because nobody's singing your song, nobody knows. Like the same way I write this book. I know, my accent's coming out, right? Finally. Takes me several hours. But anyway, like, I write this book. Nobody's singing about it. I gotta sing about it. I sing about it the most. You know? This is something we have to understand that we have to do more. You know? And by the way, I should have stretched my back. I shouldn't be sitting this long. Anyway. Volunteers. 10. Volunteers. The officer in charge of this section should see that volunteers are given non-combat duties and remain unarmed until reliable information is obtained about them. The normal recruitment processes of AAPRA will apply to both men and women volunteers. Where a district or zone has more volunteers than is needed, the Central Command should be informed so that the arrangements may be made for volunteers to be transferred to where they are most needed. So you have a Central Command. This is about the centralization of, like, this is why I say, again, you want to centralize information so that the different points can communicate more easily. Because you can't communicate to all the points simultaneously. You understand? But you could have all the points communicate with one point, and then the one point could communicate with, like if you're trying to bring a message, you have to bring it to, like, it's easier for you to bring a message to one point than it is to bring to all points. You know, because if you're bringing it to all points, like, cause sometimes you might not even want one point. You know, you would want you wouldn't want all points to know all points. You know? Yeah, I hear you. Totally agree. We don't need any template which is not within Africa. I get that in order to pay the trainees, etc., out of their pay, 10% goes back into paying the trainees. Trainer, for example, I'm probably stating the obvious, but wouldn't we need funds to begin with to do the first pay? Yeah. That's why you want to build an economy. Yeah, because a part of that is the law of gain and economics. Okay, economics is, you know, law of gain is law of gain. You know, look at the other podcasts on the economics for Africa. But basically, the law of gain is that you sell. No, you get from the. You buy cheapest and sell where it's dearest. Okay, so that means that if some area doesn't have coffee beans, right, and yet you know an area that has an abundance of coffee beans. You get those coffee beans from the area with the abundance, okay? And then you sell it to the area that doesn't have them. And then in that exchange, because the ones who have the abundance are willing to give them away pretty much. You know what I mean? They're willing to sell them for cheap. And then the where that needs the coffee beans, right, doesn't have the coffee beans, are willing to buy them for any price. And the thing we have to realize with the economy, I want you to understand that white people would get the coffee beans from you. You understand? White people will get the coffee beans from you. Like, white people want the coffee. You know, or just like with tobacco. Tobacco was one of those industries. They want the tobacco. So it's nothing saying that, and it's not just white people. I'm just saying in general, like in Africa, you know, if one area wants coffee beans, and the other one, you know, or shea butter. One area has abundance of shea butter where it's like some people eat with it, you know, and then another area just doesn't have the shea butter, but they still, you know, need it on their skin. So you just be the middle person or you tax that. So yeah, you'll have the economy, like a lot of times, economy. I mean, kingdoms. I think Brother Asar Matep once said, a lot of the empires and kingdoms were formed around trade routes. Because what you would do is you would tax the trade routes. You say in order for a merchant to pass through your area, they have to pay a fee. You know what I mean? So it's like, what we have to focus on is, yes, we get the economy, we get land, and then yes, we will then be able to so on and so forth. So one of the things you have to do as have an African right now, when really a lot of this stuff is still not, like training center is not something that's going to be done tomorrow, right? Is you get your economy up, and then you say to yourself, well, how much can I sacrifice for this training center, or how much can I give toward this training center? And so yeah, you if you don't have money now, then get money, but or get your resources, get your wealth, get your trade connections, get your networks, get ready. If you're not ready now, get ready. That's it, Let me type that actually. That's it. If not ready now, then you get ready, But some people are ready, and we're not collecting from them. You know what I mean? Like some black people right now are well to do, and we have nothing to do with them. Communications courses in radio, telegraphy, and in the use of all communication media will be given in the training camps. It is the task of the communications sector, therefore, to organize and supervise the whole communications network of the revolutionary movement, and to see that the latest and best equipment is made available to the guerrilla units. And I also want to emphasize that too, that you might say, well, look, one person makes $200,000 a year, okay? But even if somebody makes $20,000 a year, if you get 10 of them, it's $200,000. And again, like I said, the 10%. If you're asking 10%, the $200,000 person, he's giving $20,000, sure, or he or she's giving $20,000, sure. But if you ask 10% from the 20,000 person, again, the church is doing it. The church is doing this. It's asking for the $2,000, and the thing is that anybody can afford the 10%. Anybody can afford the 10%. I mean, maybe there are exceptions. But if there are exceptions, then that's what they are. They're exceptions. But as a rule, anybody could survive that. And the truth is that you would turn your budget towards them and towards getting them better opportunities. You know what I mean? You would turn your budget towards those who are making the least, or who are given the least, or who have the least, and you would improve their station. There was actually a brother. There was a brother who was like, look here, he wanted his resume. He wanted to find a job. He couldn't find a job. He was having so much trouble finding a job. Right? I say, look, let me look at your resume. This man, look, man, his resume was like 2 lines. Okay, his resume was 2 lines. I downloaded a program, rewrote his resume for him. He got a job within a month, and I did it free, obviously, right? But that's what you're supposed to do, and I mean that was me doing it free. Now, technically, like in a community, if he was given 10%, well, he was not making anything, so he probably wasn't giving 10%. He wouldn't give 10%. But the point being that, like, even another person, there was a young brother, who was trying to apply for, like, let's say a scholarship, right? And I saw, and I looked at no, actually it was the sister. So she was writing for a scholarship, right? I looked at her application, and she, it was poor. So I said, look, here's how I could help you, and then sure enough, she get the scholarship. You understand? So it's like I'm saying that we can, a lot of times, the people who are making the least or are at the bottom of the socioeconomic of our community, you could give them a helping hand. You understand? And then, sure enough, they could be at the top, or they could be higher. And when they are higher, yes, you could say, okay, now you could afford the 10%. You understand? So if they can't afford it, real talk, then sure, leave it there. But the truth is that if somebody can't afford it, we can help them out. And because and that's partly what we can do. You know, like for instance, a lot of us can do math. And a kid could just get a higher SAT score if we do that. And of course if you were just paying me to do that tutoring, if you were paying me just a little bit to do that tutoring, that they can, these kids and these children and all that, they can have a bigger, brighter future. You know what I'm saying? So it's not going to be complicated. If somebody's not because the thing is just that if we could navigate and get any of us can get to the highest echelons of this economy. You understand? If we were working together and preparing ourselves, so if we work together, there's no such complaint. And actually, some people would say, look, some people say this. They say, actually, some people say that I don't care for Amos Wilson's, literature and all that stuff, and that's on them, right? I mean, really, I don't really care for it, but in one of his books, he was talking about how the black church, and he was saying, look, and there's a church. He tells you the story of his church where they took the whole population was on food stamps. I mean, not half of them was on food stamps, and 90% of them on food stamps. Okay. And he took those food stamps, the pastor took those food stamps, and now the church owns grocery stores and owns businesses and owns so on and so forth, all on food stamp, because with the food stamp they were able to build up their own grocery store, and from there they were able to build up economy. So it's like if you work together and work intelligently, you can accomplish. You could strive, you could build wealth, you could do all of that. So it's like there's no excuse. There's no excuse. And I mean, I could probably show you guys. I probably even, if you want, I could read that passage for you guys. Just let me know. But I'm not gonna read that whole book because it's a huge book, and I mean, I have my critique. I have my critiques because again, this right here is revolutionary literature. I don't see Amos as revolutionary literature. I don't see it. So that's why I don't really vibe with it. But this right here is revolutionary literature. And I mean, I don't vibe with socialism. I'm not even vibing with this so much. So you already know. I'm a little bit more particular, more picky. But so don't sweat that. Communication courses in radio telegraphy and in the use of all. I think I already read this, but I'll read it again. Courses in radio telegraphy and in the use of all communication media will be given in the training camps. It is the task of the communications section, therefore, to organize and supervise the whole communications network of the revolutionary movement and to see that the latest and best equipment is made available to the guerrilla units. And see, that's why I love this, because it's like, this is what it is. It's not, you're not looking, and that's why I say, because I know some people are sitting there, oh man, this guy gonna talk about, my man Amos, right? Yeah, I mean that's possible, right? But anyway, so the internship thing. That's what I'm saying. You could technically help somebody with an internship application too. It's like you could help people with job applications. You could give our people job interview training, all that kind of stuff. But that's the thing that I like about this, because it's like you want to focus on the solution, not so much the problems of our people. Our people have problems. The thing that I say with regard to Amos and them is that they focus, or the Amos and the Americans in general, is that they focus on how many problems we have. Oh, we have psychological problems. Oh, we have self-hate. Oh, we have this. You notice Nkrumah does not talk about no self-hate. He says, what can you do proactively as a revolutionary? What can you do proactively for our people? You can have propaganda against our enemies and propaganda to bring up ourselves. You understand? That's why I said that every person will give you some value, but you have to understand who is revolutionary and who is giving solutions, who are giving you the insight into the resolutions or revolution. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a revolutionary. I'm not going to tell you that, because you can see I'm sitting on a couch, I'm not looking over my shoulder too much. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh yeah, I'm the most revolutionary. I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you that I would give voice to the revolutionaries. You know what I mean? I would read you. I would sit here for 5 hours. 3 hours yesterday. And 3 hours 2 days ago and 3 hours today. I would sit down for 3 hours, read to you what a revolutionary wrote. You know what I mean? I could tell you I could do that. And I got proof. You know, and truthfully, somebody should be saving this because, Whitey might just take down my account someday. This is gone because I'm not saving it. I mean, I don't have it saved. All right, so I probably shouldn't have said that though, right? All right, but anyway, there should normally consist of 10 to 25 men. This is guerrilla units. Guerrilla units should be 10 to 25 men, though the precise number of men in the unit will depend on fighting conditions and local circumstances. And of course, he doesn't necessarily just mean men, but yeah, or maybe he does. I don't know. But 10 to 25, and that's what I'm saying. I said units should be 12 people. 13 people. That's how much a unit should be. But he's saying 10 to 25, so it could be twice as much. Through the precise number of elements in a unit will depend on fighting conditions and local circumstances. In general, small units are easier to operate and are often more effective than larger ones. Members of each unit should be friends, true brothers who are ready to give their lives in the revolutionary struggle. Numbers of small guerrilla units may form part of a larger guerrilla group under a group commander. You see what I'm saying? So you have commander, soldier, general, all that kind of stuff. Guerrilla units and group leaders. Leaders should be highly trained, efficient fighters, able to command obedience to make correct and rapid decisions, patient and never unjust. Each guerrilla must know the hierarchy of his unit and group so that when there are casualties, the leadership is never in doubt. Training. A guerrilla must be absolutely clear in his mind about what he is fighting for. B. Convinced of the justice of the cause. C. A skilled soldier. D. Of strong moral fiber. Every guerrilla should be able to shoot with a rifle, revolver, machine gun, handle and throw a knife well, make and throw bombs, and march continuously for long periods with very little. Ride a bicycle, paddle a canoe, and row a boat. Climb walls and surmount obstacles with the aid of rope. Change and mend wheels on bicycles and cars, and carry out other elementary repairs. Read and understand maps and know how to make use of them, and send and receive messages in the Morse code. Choo, 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 right? Or even you could do the drums. Well, no, just do the Morse code. All right. Not every soldier will be accomplished in all these tasks, but the more education and knowledge he has, the greater chance he has to becoming a good revolutionary fighter. Equipment. Apart from arms and ammunition, every guerrilla unit should carry certain basic equipment such as first aid supplies, compass, watch, whistle, torches, files, saws, fishing line and hooks, water bottles, etc. In addition, each guerrilla must always carry a rope of about 2 meters or some other substitute, palm tree fibers tied together. The rope can prevent a comrade from becoming separated from other members of his unit on a dark night when comrades can tie themselves to each other. It can also be useful, for example, for crossing rivers and for securing prisoners. So you're saying everybody should carry around rope. You understand? And I mean, I don't know about tying each other. I think you could hold on to it. Well, I guess you could tie each other. It's just that, just if you have a knife on hand, you could untie yourself quickly in case you need to run. But he's like, that's the thing though. When it's at nighttime, it's really dark. Strategies and tactics. The tactics of guerrilla warfare must be subordinate to the strategies of the Revolutionary War. Tactics will therefore vary according to the particular phases of the struggle and to the activities and actions of the enemy. Attack is the first principle, though there are times when defense is both necessary and useful. These two methods, attack and defense, are therefore closely linked and basic in guerrilla tactics. Attack and defense, and therefore are therefore closely linked and basic in guerrilla tactics. Attack and defense. Attack is the first principle, and therefore at times defense is both necessary. All right. Mobility. According to necessity, the guerrilla unit must be able to move in a few minutes from the field of battle, and in a few hours even from the region of struggle. Okay, so you have to be able to move a few minutes, like I said, 3-minute attack, or even leave the whole region in a few hours. So you have to know. So for this reason, it must change its front continually and avoid encirclement, the most dangerous tactic employed by the enemy. So encirclement is when they surround you, right? You have to avoid being surrounded, because if you have to scout the area first, make sure that you're not surrounded. It is the task of the guerrilla unit to surprise the enemy, to inflict casualties and destruction, and to disappear without loss. This is the tactic of surprise attack and rapid disappearance. And again, modern militaries cannot prepare for this. Like I said, even the police can't prepare for this. You understand? Even the police can't prepare for you just attacking and disappearing. Or they can't prepare for crime. crime prevent, like just random crimes, sporadic crime. They're not prepared for that. They take time to get to a site. Someone has to call them and all that. 3 days is the longest time a guerrilla unit should remain in any one place. And see, that's an unfortunate thing right here. 3 days, because I tell you, there's some refugees and revolutionaries and all that who just cannot be anywhere because there's an assassin always going for them. And that's why I say, I wouldn't say I'm a revolutionary because I could be in the same place for how long, nobody cares. Whereas, guerrilla units, people are caring, On arriving at a new hiding place, tracks and paths must be covered up and no noise made. And I want to actually just emphasize that point. That's why I said that, like, a lot of the speakers in America and all those other places, but, I really focus on America, is like, you cannot be real and announce where you can't be a real revolutionary and be announcing where you're going to be before you get there. You understand? You see what you say? You said 3 days is the longest any guerrilla unit. No guerrilla, I'm not saying anything about, I know you probably don't know who I'm talking about, but I'm talking about, like, Umar and all that, Umar Johnson and that. You cannot be a revolutionary, right? Like, you're obviously, it's like, what's his name? One of these brothers. Oh, man. Like, sorry, it's actually getting late for me. But one of these brothers said, if you're not doing anything, now, if the enemy's not doing anything against you, you're not doing anything. Okay? If the enemy is not doing anything against you, you're not doing anything. I don't remember who said it. I feel like I want to say Amilcar Cabral. I want to say Thomas Sankara. I want to say Sekou Touré. No, but I think it was Sekou Touré. Right? If the enemy is not doing anything against you, you are not doing anything. Okay? So if you are telling the enemy, you're broadcasting, I'm going to be in Georgia at the conference of blah 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 blah, right? And they already know you're going to be at this hotel at this night, and they don't do anything about it. It's because you're not doing anything, And actually, I think I did look at the comments. So I'm gonna say, will the same be applied to? Oh yeah, I hear you, brother. Dr. Amos or anyone are not exempt from criticism. We all have strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, you're doing your part of the revolutionary, brother. Revolutionary, more power to you. Come on. I know it's a bit random, but Naruto. You said Naruto. That's mad random. And the layout of the different arms resonates with what you're talking about. I don't know who the different Naruto was mad random. You can absolutely be a revolutionary and announce where you are. You can't be in a combat and announce where you are. Well, yeah, like a guerrilla. Yeah. Oh dang, we got Sister Mello, Auntie Mello. So I gotta sit up. But yeah. Like by revolution, I mean this. When I say that, I mean if the enemy wants you, like you say, like exactly in combat, and the revolutionary in combat. That's the distinction. But the revolutionary technically would be in combat. You get what I'm saying? Like the revolutionary would be in combat. But I mean, although I'll give this. I mean, like it depends on what part of the revolution you're talking about. But yeah, she's right. There are non-combatant roles where like they're technically not, killing you and all that. So there would be revolutionaries who are non-combatant. But I'm talking about, let's say these quote unquote speakers and men who are like just like kind of like in Wazungu comfort, like if Wazungu was really threatened by them, because a lot of times we would say things like the most threatening thing is a brother with an education or a brother who blah blah blah, and it's like no, nobody's threatened by that, because what they would be threatened by is the end of domination. But yeah, of course there are definitely revolutionary roles that are non-combatant, sister stay comfortable. No, you gotta, when the queen comes in the room, you gotta be all, no man, I wasn't, All right, so let's see. Marches should be carried out at night. Let's see, where was I? Oh yeah, so 3 days. That's what I was saying. 3 days. Like she said, guerrilla unit. So sister came with the correction. Guerrilla unit. They're in combat. 3 days. They can't lay low, and they can't be there. And then of course, if you're in a non-combatant role, but a lot of these brothers are not in like I'm telling you that it's just not like a lot of it is kind of this. Like I don't want to say revolutionary. I just don't want to use. I don't want to use the word revolutionary. Marches should be carried out at night. Because like this guy right here, like I said, Nkrumah takes over a country, you know, takes over a country, and he's trying to do armed struggle across Africa. They're not gonna let him, sit down. And I mean, of course, he does travel, but still, it's just different, Like he has security all the time and all that. And I mean, you will say that everybody else has it, but it's a different level with this guy compared to whomever else, or even Garvey. They like block Garvey from going to Africa, period. That's why I didn't want to show my face. I was like, I just want to go to Africa, but you know, with BLM doing all this stuff they're doing, I think I'll be able to get into Africa with no problem. Because I mean, they was like, I'm like, hey, I ain't them. I'm just reading books. All right, marches should be carried out at night. There should be no talking or smoking. The feet should be lifted high at each step to avoid tripping on stones, branches, and other obstacles. During the day, the guerrilla should sleep in turns, study maps of the region, do special section work, and so on. By rapid maneuver, guerrilla units are able to 1. Retreat from unfavorable battle conditions, and in this way avoid losses. 2. Link up with other guerrilla units to draw the enemy out to cause the greatest material and human damage possible. So rapid maneuver, guerrillas are link up with other units and draw the enemy. So you want the enemy to come out, and you could deal the greatest human damage possible. That's also fundamental. All right, concentration and dispersal of forces. The enemy is numerically superior and better armed than the guerrilla army. Okay, guerrilla units must overcome this disadvantage by knowing when to concentrate their forces and when to disperse them. They must concentrate their forces by linking up with other units and by reinforcement when the enemy is in a weak position and can be attacked. They must disperse forces when confronted by large confrontations of enemy units, when there is danger of encirclement, and when the terrain is unfavorable. So that's really important. This is really important stuff. Like I said, I don't even know. Like, this book is so good because I wanted to write another book, but I'm like, I want you to just read this book. I mean, obviously I already read it to you, but still, I want you to read this book. I want our people to read this book. All right. Bases. A base must be established before a guerrilla movement can begin. A village, a section of liberated territory, for example, can serve as a base. It is of vital importance to make the correct choice of site. It must be strategically placed, defensible and secret, and be in an area where the masses solidly support the revolutionary struggle. Where geographical conditions make the formation of a base impossible, a circle of civil collaborators must be formed. So you have a base for the thing, a village or whatever, right? Choice of objectives for attacks. Communication above all. You want to attack the communication of these large militaries. Right now though, in modern times, Wazungu uses satellites, and you can't really attack satellites. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you could, but it's not practical that 12 people are gonna attack a satellite. But so that's one of the problems right now. But railways, you could attack railways, airfields, roads are some of the most important, most suitable objectives for guerrilla attacks. And of course you have to realize too that the railways, airfields, roads, those, and communications too, those disrupt the operation of the workers and the proletariat, or the workers or the people that you're trying to liberate, and that can cause some tension because you're going to be labeled as a terrorist or something along those lines, But right here, military transportation, for example, columns of vehicles, troops on the march, convoys of lorries carrying provisions are obvious targets, So if you know the enemy's trade routes, you attack them and where they're vulnerable, and that's this is basic, like there are video games that make you do this. You know what I mean? Not that I would know. These glasses are just for show. I'm not a nerd. All right. Anyway, the guerrilla unit will occupy positions inaccessible to the enemy, favorable for mobile defense, and which lie in the direction from which the enemy is expected. The primary condition for the success of an attack is the profound knowledge of the terrain. The primary condition for the success of the attack is the profound knowledge of the terrain, the exploitation of this knowledge, and a careful preparation of the action. Combat in favorable terrain. In favorable terrain, such as mountains and forests, it is possible to form and train large numbers of guerrillas to construct bases, repair units, dispensaries, education centers, arms depots, and so on. Conditions are also favorable for the establishment of contingency forces. With contingency forces, the leaders must take into account with the terrain, quantity of arms and ammunition in his disposal, and the problem of reinforcements. The sphere of activity of a partisan unit must be as large as conditions permit and coordinate with the activities of neighboring units. If units mobilize at night, the journey must not be longer than 5 or 6 hours from the safe place. Small groups can be sent out of the safe space to reconnoiter, like reconnaissance, right? But it's French, right? It's another French word. but so as not to alert the enemy. They must not engage in battle before the main force arrives. Wherever possible, similar arms and ammunition as that used by the enemy should be employed. When you can, use the enemy's weapons, or use weapons to channel like the enemy's. Food supplies are difficult to obtain in inaccessible terrain. It is necessary, therefore, to form strong liaison with local suppliers to ensure that there is always sufficient. It should be remembered that there are arms and other supplies needed by the guerrilla forces in enemy supply depots. So you see what I'm saying? Like, you can go into the enemy supply. These depots may be raided and supplies seized. And of course, you got to be wary of the enemy setting up false supplies. The guerrilla units must maintain regular liaison with the leaders of the liberation struggle by means of a network of people who are trustworthy and who will hide provisions and emissaries in their houses. Internal liaison must be carried out by radio and various technical means. Or you can just text them, right? Alright, combat in unfavorable terrain. Plains, and obviously like a secure texting for somebody messages that. Plains, unforested areas, etc. are in general unfavorable terrain for the operation of guerrilla forces. So the reason is because you can't hide, right? In these areas, attention must be focused on the destruction of the enemy's means of communication. It is here that the saboteurs can operate effectively in blowing up bridges, cutting telephone and telegraph wires, and so on. A guerrilla unit is unfavorable terrain should consist of from 10 to 15 men, since speed and mobility are vital. For a particular operation, guerrilla units may unite, but they should disperse again immediately afterwards. And of course, this already tells you that the enemy is going to try to focus their bases on plain terrain. Like, they're not going to focus their bases in freaking mountains or forests. And so you have to be smart with that. And I don't know if you guys remember this, and this is why I want to, if I do write another book, I want to emphasize that you want to study the wars of the world. Like in Vietnam, how they would dig tunnels. Or even I think it was even Afghanistan, where you would use tunnel networks so that you could, probably, if you wanted to, basically you could hide underground. You know what I mean? Or you could arrive. You could show up underground. There's a lot that's going on. There's a lot in warfare. A lot of ingenuity. A lot of things to learn. A lot of things to do. Obviously, that you could be vulnerable underground. From whatever. But again, we want to have a vast intelligence and use our intelligence to really fight in unfavorable terrain as well. Unfavorable terrain usually means dense habitation and farms. This is good country for supplies. Guerrillas must make contact with trustworthy people who will help to supply the unit. In these circumstances, it's not possible to have the amenities of base camps, but guerrillas will be able to depend on support from among the local population. A dense population allows guerrillas to pass information, but at the same time, there's a greater risk of betrayal. Important messages must be written in code or sent orally. So there's a risk of betrayal in dense areas. And dense areas, that could be cities. You know what I mean? So villages. The group of village revolutionaries is responsible for the struggle in their own particular village. The group consists of politically aware villagers who live side by side with the other inhabitants, but who maintain contact with the guerrilla units operating in the region. A group of village revolutionaries can be established only when the area borders on a zone occupied by the liberation movement. A village group must be small, and the leader must be under orders from the leader of the region. The activities of the group are concerned mainly with espionage, sabotage, and propaganda. Members of the group have arms and explosives, but the objectives of their military operations are determined by the commander of the guerrilla units in the region. The group must help the guerrilla units in the region, give them information, and provide supplies. It is night work, and during the day, members of the group must live like other villagers. Towns. Guerrillas may infiltrate the outlying areas of towns and form special freedom fighter units. Their risk is sabotage, propaganda, and the acquiring and passing on of information. Attacks can be carried out at night on solitary members of the enemy forces and police. It is responsibility of members of town freedom fighters units to back up the revolutionary struggle by paralyzing the economic life of the center. So I also want to say this though, thanks to the sister for the correction. You guys got to give me some corrections when I have them. It turns out talking for 3 hours, reading for 3 hours is actually pretty exhausting, and I'm bound to make some more errors. So I appreciate any corrections, and of course the sister for giving the correction. It's like, yeah, you could have, because in the back of my mind I'd be thinking, oh yeah, I remember having some critique of Umar, but it's not, but like it might not have actually applied in a generic sense or the general sense, particularly in this situation. I might have just said something that was a memory, but it's like, it's kind of hard to like, this is actually a really difficult thing to read. This is dense reading. I'm not gonna front, but it's more entertaining now with everybody reading with me. Alright, so discipline. There must be no abuse of power of any kind. A freedom fighter who steals, loots, rapes, or commits any other crime against the community must be tried and severely punished. It should be explained that such a breakdown in discipline endangers the whole revolutionary movement. Again, because the enemy is trying to propagandize against you. Discipline comes from inner conviction. And that's not just the only reason. These are terrible things to do. You're not supposed to be a terrible person. Like, you're not supposed to be a terrible thing. Like, that's one of the things. But the other thing is that obviously the enemy can use it against you. But it's really also just don't do these things. These are terrible things to do. Discipline comes from inner conviction. It is not a gift, but it can be acquired by education, exercise, and life in the guerrilla unit. A suspected traitor should be tried by a military court and given every chance to defend himself, or herself, obviously. If found guilty, he must be shot. Well, I mean, I would usually be more harsh with men, though. I really wouldn't want to be harsh with women. Reconnaissance. I mean, obviously, there's women who are really bad, but I'm not, like, me personally, I don't think I'll ever shoot a woman. You know what I mean? Like, a man, I have no problem, but, watch out. But, nah, I'm not, I don't think so. Well, not a black woman, alright, so anyway, reconnaissance. This must be carried out ceaselessly so that the most up-to-date information is obtained about the enemy's position and strength. Information can be collected by A. Observation, B. The tapping of enemy telephone and radio messages, C. Questioning local inhabitants, D. Interrogating deserters and prisoners, E. Reconnoiter in combat, the ambushing of enemy units and seizing of equipment and prisoners, F. Making use of the network of secret collaborators. Information obtained from local inhabitants and from deserters and prisoners must always be verified, since the enemy uses agents to spread false information. Prisoners should be interrogated by the unit commander or experienced members of the revolutionary political organization. Interrogations should be conducted in secret and individually. Prisoners. The question of prisoners, particularly during the initial stages of revolutionary warfare, poses a number of problems. A small unit of guerrillas, sometimes without even a base camp, cannot spare time, energy, or supplies in looking after them. It is sometimes necessary to abandon them after seizing their weapons and supplies. That's actually tough. That's a tough call right there. You see what I'm saying? That's a tough call. In general, they should be treated as humanely as possible. If the enemy retains the hope that he can save his life by surrendering, his will to fight will be considerably reduced. On the other hand, if the enemy is unaware of the moderate and human treatment given by guerrillas to prisoners, he will fight with greater fury. It is in this belief that there is no escape. In the belief that there is no escape, yeah. So the revolutionary forces have liberated a considerable area, and have safe base camps. Prisoners can be taken and made to do useful work. So just to clarify, he's saying, let's say you're moving in a unit with minimum rations, minimal rations, right? Then you take on a prisoner, or you take on 5 prisoners, and you have to keep them alive, but you have minimal rations. You understand? Now, obviously, I think earlier in the first part, he was saying turn in prisoners immediately. Turn in prisoners, but you sometimes can't turn in prisoners immediately. It might take you a few days. It might take you a few whatever. And so this is actually a really complicated question, because on the one hand, like particularly, like your prisoner might have valuable information that you need to get out of them, or even your prisoner could be like an African. You know what I mean? Just like an African, and you just don't want to, and like you feel like, yeah, or anything can happen. So this is why warfare, politics, all that stuff are like present situations. It's not something you really read or study. It's when you're out on the field, something may apply one time, it's not going to apply the next time. Like you're dealing with real life. It's complex. It can't be broken down like in a book. But this is also still an excellent book. And I hope you think. Oh, thanks, sister. Uh, thanks so much. Maybe I should write that down. Alright, let's see. So camouflage. The use of effective camouflage is of supreme importance, since the guerrilla's first duty is to remain hidden, and his camps, fortifications, and arms depots must be concealed both from land and from the air. Branches, grass, cane, straw, and similar local materials should be used. Each terrain has a dominant color, which must determine the color of the guerrilla's clothing and equipment. Acquisition of arms. At the start of guerrilla warfare, each unit acquires arms for its own use by A. Purchasing them, B. Raiding armed depots, C. Disarming enemy soldiers and police, D. Making them themselves, E. Obtaining them through workers in munition factories. For the acquisition of arms, it is often sufficient to use rudimentary weapons such as knives, axes, assegais, sharpened canes, sabers, etc. In this way, the guerrilla unit arms itself little by little and prepares the conditions for the acquisition of more arms. Storage of arms. And actually, I want to tell you guys about this though. So there's a book on my shelf. I can't remember the name. I think it's Fighting for Freedom, and I haven't read too far into it. Brother Buddha Medicine, he did a whole podcast on it though, right? So check out KWAZ Radio and Buddha Medicine podcast and all that. But one section of the book, they were talking about this revolution, the Bahia revolution, I think. And there's this brother, his Islamic brother, who brags about how that was the most deadly revolution, during slavery in like Brazil or something. And I mean, it wasn't too many. It wasn't really that deadly, right? But like maybe like 7 people were killed or something like that. But or I don't remember the number, but let's just say it was 7. But the thing is that even though they had guns, apparently all the kills were based off of martial arts, and like were all like stab or machete wounds. So these Africans who were trained in like martial arts, like most all their kills, like the most deadly aspect of them was their hand-to-hand combat, or their melee attacks. So it's really important to not underestimate this. And of course, Malcolm X has his, I can't remember which speech it was now, but I think it's the Ballad of the Bullet, but he discusses how the Vietnamese just had a bowl of rice and a knife, and he scared the Americans. So it's important that we study. Like we have to study warfare, and this is one of the books that I want us to really study. So storage of arms. Arms should be stored in boxes lined with tin and buried deeply in widely dispersed areas. The places where arms are stored should be known only to a very few people, for example, unit and group leaders. Arms and equipment should be regularly inspected and all metal parts protected against rust. A badly preserved weapon or its loss can cause the failure of an operation and endanger the lives of every member of the unit. Okay. Espionage. A spy serving the revolution is a comrade who pretends to be a friend of the enemy, and obtains and passes information of use in the waging of the revolutionary struggle. Information to be sent via a third party, and if it is of crucial importance and urgent, by word of mouth. The revolutionary double agent has a very important and difficult task. He must deceive the enemy and be unsuspected even by his closest friends. He must be in a position to obtain vital secret information about the enemy's strengths and his plans, and to know how to convey the information safely to the revolutionary forces. Where a counter-spy is a member of the enemy army, he can give details of the enemy's battle units, the disposition of the troops, their morale, equipment, and tactical and strategic plans. A very important part of the help they can give is by leaving the strategic points undefended in battle with little ammunition or in the charge of a coward, so that the points can be easily captured. An officer in the enemy army who is a double agent could be worth more than 10 officers in the revolutionary forces. Spies and espionage, like that's basic. Like you read The Art of War and you see how useful spies are. So, and another thing I want to point out is that Nzinga used spies during our enslavement, like where she would have people like legit ride over to Brazil, like be captured in Brazil and then be able to foment attacks in the middle of Brazil. Like our ancestors are so on point. We cannot underestimate them, and we have to, move ourselves forward in that same sense, right? And sorry, I'm getting really tired, so. But it looks like it's just a few more pages. Enemy spies and infiltrators. They must be tried by a military court and if found guilty, sentenced to death. So you kill your spies. Each case must be thoroughly and carefully investigated before sentence is passed. Revolutionary intelligence agents may be mistaken for enemy spies, and the danger of their condemnation may be guarded against. So, sometimes your spies can be mistaken for enemy spies. You know what I mean? And sometimes your spies are enemy spies. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so you have to be careful. Enemy attacks when fired out, and that's the thing that we already know. Like sometimes we out there we call, like actually we saw that, where somebody calls one person an agent, and it's like, ain't you an agent? You know what I'm saying? Like it's like we call one person an agent, and the other person's an agent. So it's just like, and you already know who I'm talking about. And I'm not afraid to say names, right? Tariq. Tariq saying stuff. All right. Enemy attack. And the thing is this too. You might be like, why are you saying names? No, you gotta say names. I was in a group. I was in an organization where only the leadership knew that one of the other members of the leadership was suspected, and his name was Charles Barron. But like so my leadership was Maddox. Maddox was saying, like he was like, I knew that Charles Barron was like a traitor, but I didn't think he was that big of a race traitor. But nobody else knew that Charles Barron was a traitor. Or if they did, whatever, that was on them. But like I did it. I was just an ignorant little 20-year-old whatever, right? So I was just like, what? My whole world was, but like, and he was like, and he said, we have to emphasize intelligence agents because a lot of times, a lot of the people around us are agents. A lot of them are on the police payroll. A lot of it is going on in our community, but we're not saying anything. We're waiting, and sometimes people are just like, we'll wait for you to figure it out, and then, like for me, I put my energy into, the Freedom Party thing. I put like everything I had into that, like a sacrifice for that, and it was betrayed from the inside, and it was betrayed from the get-go, and it's like, like that's something I don't want to give to other people. You know what I mean? So we have to be on top of our own intelligence. If we have people who are agents who are operating, or we know that they're just out for grift and for money, then just call them out. Don't, like, there's no reason to protect them, no reason to, just call them out, like from jump. Enemy attack. When fired on, comrades must immediately fall to the ground. Then, as soon as possible, each one should run in a separate direction, look for a safe hiding place, and await calmly for the night. Interesting. So instead of shooting back, he's saying just fall to the ground. In the darkness, contact can again be made through specially arranged signals, animal and bird cries, drumming, etc., with the rest of the unit, and a new hiding place sought. So I guess this is when you're attacking your enemy area. No attempt should be made to fight back. Only under very special conditions, when it's certain that casualties can be inflicted on the enemy, without the guerrillas suffering any loss, should a counterattack be made. It must never be forgotten that it is the task of the guerrilla not to fight or to provoke a fight, but to carry out the operation assigned to him, and then to disappear. So that's the thing with guerrilla warfare. It's about carrying out these. You attack the supply depot. You attack this. You attack that. Because the thing is this: warfare is expensive. You want to strain the military of another country. You know what I mean? Like already, for instance, in America, you have the masses of Americans saying, "Oh, you're spending too much money on the military." Now, what if it doubles? What if it triples? What if it quadruples? You understand? And then you see how they cut back on the social services as the schools start being, and it's all because of a war. You understand? And it's all because of a war. No, they're not gonna have that. The thing is, and then they're gonna have their own little conflicts within their own little. They're gonna have their own concessions and compromises within, and that's gonna take away from you, take away from the concentration from you. So it's like, no, you don't focus on. Like, if you're outnumbered and outgunned, you don't focus on, oh yeah, I'm gonna definitely take out you guys, because you are precious. You are precious. It's not to say that you're taking a risk, but you don't have to die. You understand? It's not to say that you have to be a coward or nothing, but it's just the focus is on the bigger picture, the larger war. And that's something that is really, like I said, this book is really good. I kind of wish he explained that. I mean, maybe he does. I don't know. But I mean that's also in the Art of War. That's also in the Art of War about how costly war is, and now you don't want to make it too prolonged. because it can cause dissatisfaction and poverty at home. So that's also in Sun Tzu and all that crap. So it's not like I would tell you, yeah, sure. Usually, once upon a time, I was like, what, I don't think you should read these white folk, but like, go ahead. You know what I mean? Like, if it's on war, go ahead. You know what I mean? That's okay. I mean, you were reading anyways, but if you ask me, sure. In general, the guerrilla shoots to demoralize the enemy and to keep him constantly on the alert. The enemy must not be allowed to rest. So you don't want him to go to sleep. You don't want his morale to be low. You want him to be out of whatever. After an enemy attack, 1 or 2 comrades should stay behind to keep an eye on the enemy. If the enemy encamps, the unit should be informed so that at night it may be fired on. Constant harassment of the enemy is the primary task of the guerrilla force. Is to constantly harass them, and then constantly, disrupt their activities, and constantly, and then make it costly for them. Sabotage. The enemy may be sabotaged in a number of ways, apart from the more obvious blowing up of bridges and railways. And again, protect and key industrial points, for example. And again, to protect these places from explosion and all that, they have to employ people and pay people and all that. So it's like you want to drain their economy. You want to be a drain on their economy. If you just want to fight them, you're out of luck, because that's what they are specialized at. They're specialized in that. But if you drain their economy, it's like they have to make concessions. Post office employees can delay mail. So this is just regular people that are not. So this will be what the sister was talking about with regard to the thing. I'm all about calling names. Call them out. Otherwise, we're protecting them and not doing our part in protecting our community. Exactly. I know you called out Umar. Sure, but that's me calling you out, right? No. I mean, calling you out, calling out people out. Well, I'm not calling you out. Look, it's late. This is 4 hours. I can't talk. But all right, this is what she was talking about with revolutionaries who are non-combatant. So she's saying postal office employees can delay mail, lose official correspondences either by sending it to the wrong destination or preventing it from being delivered. They can scrutinize mail and pass on important information to the guerrillas. You know what I mean? Like they could open up a letter, read it, and then reseal it in another letter, in another envelope. You know what I mean? All sorts of stuff. Telephone companies' employees must listen in to all calls likely to be of the interest in the revolutionary struggle and see that any useful information is made known to the guerrillas. But see, again, this is something that you don't announce if you're doing it. You know what I'm saying? like you don't announce because if you announce why you're doing it, you probably ain't doing it. You know what I mean? Like you are there was somebody, like even people, like there was this guy who rang a doorbell, while he was delivering mail, and then Amazon fired him. Because he was working for Amazon, and so Amazon's like a company that delivers packages. And I think that there's a sign I don't know what it was about that he got fired for, but he just made a video of him doing that and he got fired. Or somebody, saying, hey, this is how they make the food at, whatever restaurant. They got fired. So yeah, you don't announce if you're delaying mail on purpose, if you're losing official correspondences or anything like that. You don't, or if you're reading mail. Telephone companies, same thing. You don't announce if you're listening, but you listening. You know what I mean? And you tell somebody. But that's what I say about the centralization of authority, centralization of command, because without that centralization, who are you telling? Because if you just tell the wrong person, you're done. You know what I mean? Must listen in to all calls likely to be of interest in the revolutionary struggle and see that any useful information is made known to the guerrilla. And no, actually no, but I should say this though. The sister got it on her YouTube channel, so I'm not actually snitching. You know what I'm saying? I'm not. Unless that is snitching. I don't know. That's not snitching. I don't know. I hope it's not. I'm not saying that I get tired and then I start saying stuff. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I'm not thinking right now, I guess so. But I don't usually talk this late, okay? Guerrilla attendants should adulterate petrol by adding sugar to it, put sand into the tanks of enemy army vehicles, and remove vital tools and spare parts. Garage attendants should adulterate petrol. Look at that. Adding sugar to it. You in a garage, you add sugar, or you put sand in the enemy's vehicles. Sabotage. Look at that. Sabotage. This is sabotage. Drivers should cause accidents. Even if you just drive it on the road, cause accidents without arousing suspicion. Sometimes you're on the highway and you're like, oh man, there's another accident, and all these police are here, and oh no, like there's like 20 police and there's an accident, and blah blah. You could do that on purpose, and nobody knows. I mean, obviously you can't do it more than once or more than a few times. They suspend your license and all that. But the point, and obviously it's a dangerous game. Of course, you can always fake it, okay? That's the whole point. You have all these police in one area, or in the case of a revolutionary war, you have all these military soldiers in one area, right? They're all in this one area, then they're not in another area. You understand? Oh, there was this big, like that fireworks explosion. How many people go mobilize for that fireworks explosion? That gives you the cover, that gives you the good distraction for attacking another place. You know what I mean? Teachers should tell their pupils that everyone has a right to be free. They should explain the present African situation and the working of colonialism and neocolonialism. Reference should be made to the liberated areas of Africa and the progress being made there. So I mean, this would be something. So like, actually, I think this would work for like the sister was saying about a lot of the people who are just doing the teaching. They're doing the teaching, and this could be revolutionary in itself. Because I know the sister was making a point about particularly a historian being a revolutionary, and it's like, and this historian could be said to have been doing this kind of stuff, doing this kind of stuff, and that would be an argument for revolutionaryism. So that's why the sister should have just like when she was talking about this, she should have just called up Nkrumah, and and then I'd have been like, oh, okay, you're right. Workers should stay away from work as often as they can, feigning illness. They should constantly seek ways of undermining the economic strength of the enemy. This is something that our enslaved ancestors did. What one ancestor said, he ain't never worked a full day of work. The entire time he was enslaved. He's like, and I mean, because a lot of times be like, why these white people gonna call us lazy? Why they gonna call us lazy if we did all the work? And it's like, well, I mean, sometimes we was just, we did do all the work, sure, but sometimes we was just like, I ain't gonna do all that shit, Sorry, let me curse. Alright, civil servants should be as slack as possible in the carrying out of their duties, that's the bureaucracy. While pretending to be loyal to the oppressor, they should continually criticize their policies to subordinates and spread despondency and lack of confidence in the way the country is being administered. Tradesmen, engineers should block drains and pipes and cause electrical failures in the homes and offices of the enemy. See, the thing I don't like about this book is that it's so good that it makes me not want to write another book and just tell you guys to read this book. You know what I mean? Like, I almost feel like I gotta write a book to tell you guys, oh, go and read this book, which is like, I just don't know if that's a good thing to do. But it's like, I want you guys to read this. This is nice. I like it. Hope you guys are liking it too. Except for that, I'm being a little awkward. But again, it's like, it's a long time. Every member of the community can assist in the spreading of rumors, the creation of a general atmosphere of discontent and unease, and in the undermining of the enemy people's morale, and making it apparent that they are unwelcome in the country, and they will shortly be ejected. So, like, part of the revolutionary. So, like I say, like BLF, EFF, those two parties, they're doing what needs to be done. As much as I may not like socialism or whatever, like, they're doing this. They're raising this discontent. They're saying, look, we want you guys to go, and we should be amplifying their voices. That's one thing I'm trying to connect with is the South African political, because it's just beautiful. That's beautiful, and the conscious movement in America is also beautiful. I'm not gonna front. I mean, except for a lot of the blah blah blah, but it's beautiful to be about this. So let's just continue to support our own, and this helps you. This is a good book. Attacking a village. Before an attack, as much information as possible should be obtained about the village and the local terrain. For example, where the cables are, telegraphic and telephonic, how many people are armed. If no one is armed, how far away the nearest armed men. If there is a radio transmitter or an amateur radio transmitter, the names and whereabouts of traders and colonial agents, so people are going to know that. The location of bridges, roads, airfields, etc. Once all this data has been collected, the appropriate file should be given to the operations section, and only after every detail has been examined should a decision be made whether or not to attack. When an attack is decided upon, the timing must be fixed, and the men chosen to carry out the attack so that the operation may be carried out efficiently and successfully, each group acting independently from each other. One group will cut the telephone wires, a second the telegraph cables, a third one will, with the help of villagers, search houses where there are arms and seize them. A fourth group will capture traders and policemen. All these tasks should be carried out swiftly so that, apart from anything else, the guerrilla may impress the enemy with their efficiency, discipline, and moral conviction. When the operation is concluded, the guerrilla forces must rapidly disappear from the village and hide once more in the neighborhood territory. So actually, this is actually important. So dead and wounded. If time allows, the dead should be buried. The wounded should, if possible, be carried to a safe place for treatment. Arms and equipment of dead and wounded must be retrieved immediately. But that's another thing too. You see how you can attack a village and get arms, because the village will have these traders and colonial agents, and the village will have its own its police force and armed people, and you can attack and get that. And that's the same thing that's with Africa today. You know, you'll have the governmental agents in these villages, and yeah, you know, and they'll be less protected than, like, let's say, the capital, and that'll be a way to acquire arms and munitions. You know, but you gotta study. Study is most important. But like study is important. Defense of an occupied village. So each house should be regarded as a fortification to be connected with the next one by a trench about a meter deep. Oh yeah, defense of an occupied village. So he's telling you how to defend a village. So each house should have a trench a meter deep. Revolutionaries should be able to pass safely from one house to another, protected from enemy fire. Barricades made from bricks, stones, logs, furniture should be prepared and ready to be put into position in streets where an enemy attack is imminent. In all houses, there should be holes made just over the height of a man, through which the enemy may be fired on. To shoot, comrades should stand on a bench, box, or stool in order to reach the necessary height. Enemy bullets entering through these holes when the guerrilla is moving around the room will be too high to do any damage. Villagers who are not prepared to assist in the fight should be compelled to leave the village. Okay, so if you're not, you know, you just say get out of the village. And I mean, obviously that's tough, you know, but whatever. You know, because you don't want to displace people, but you have to in order to defend, because you're trying to liberate a whole continent, you know, and eventually give a better life to the people. But this is just in the case of an enemy attack. So large villages where a considerable number of guerrillas are operating should be divided up into zones, each zone being the responsibility of one leader. There should be one leader in supreme command. So you see the hierarchy again. If the enemy captures a house, smoke must be used to halt the advance, and provide cover by setting alight prepared oil rags and other inflammable materials soaked in petrol or oil. In the course of the revolutionaries' armed struggle, it will be necessary at times to destroy some of the country's assets, such as bridges, crops, buildings, airfields, telephones, and telegraphic networks. Obviously, no more destruction will be carried out than is strictly necessary for the success of military operations. Once colonialism and neocolonialism have been totally defeated and freedom attained, it will be comparatively easy, inspired by love of country, to rebuild what has been destroyed and for the people to advance to complete fulfillment. And again, that's another thing you want to remember. If you destroy these stuff and they come and they rebuild it, it's going to cost them. You know? And I mean, the people might say, oh, well, you're terrible, blah, blah, blah. But the main thing is to get them out of Africa. You know? I say organize, technologize, and strategize against Africa's invaders. Okay? You want to get these people out of Africa so that we can live free. You know what I mean? You want to. So relation between revolutionaries and civilians. The guerrilla should always show gratitude for the food he eats in villages and homes. He should explain to the donor that the help he is giving to the guerrillas has assisted the progress of the revolutionary struggle, which is liberating the people from colonialism and neocolonialism. Where possible, the guerrilla should help with housework, farming, and any other work needed to be done. At all times, the guerrilla must set an example of respect, hard work, and devotion to the revolutionary cause. So you come to a town, you won the gunfight. You don't just sit around, you know. But it's name names. You don't just sit around. You do work right there too, you know. Obviously, no, never mind. I was gonna make a joke about me not going to work, but right. All right, political work. Guerrilla forces are invincible because of their liaison with the masses. Propagandists must explain the revolutionary movement to the people and see that they are informed on guerrilla victories. They should be people who have authority and influence in the region, particularly among the workers. Pamphlets, newspapers, broadcasts can all carry the message of the revolution. Discussion groups and meetings can be organized. So you have those meetings and discussion groups even when you're doing your revolutionary work. The more efficacious the propaganda work, the more rapidly will the public conscience be aroused. This in turn will greatly affect revolutionary operations by ensuring mass support. Those organizing and carrying out guerrilla activities must be supplied with information of a political nature, the political composition of the area in which they are operating, political parties, aims, leadership, and the possibility of infiltration. 2. The reaction of the masses to economic situation. 3. The degree of people's collaboration with the enemy. 4. The morale of urban and agricultural workers. 5. The response of the masses to revolutionary activities. 6. The centers of political life in towns or village. And 7. The composition and strength of trade unions and such like organizations. So you wanna know all these. So it says those supplied with information of political nature. You must know all these things. So civilian organizations, these play an important part in the liberation movement. Their duties are manifold. They arrange the collection of contribution and taxes, maintain supplies, and spread propaganda. In enemy-held areas, civilian organizations must be clandestine. In enemy-held areas. In liberated areas, it is necessary to establish administrative organs which should be responsible for the formulation of laws, rules, and regulations from the administration of the zone. Hold on a second. These play an important part in the liberation movement. Civilian organizations. Okay, their duties are manifold. They arrange the collection of contribution and taxes. See, I said about taxes. Maintain supplies and so contributions and taxes. Maintain supplies and spread propaganda. In enemy-held areas, civilian organizations must be clandestine. In liberated areas, it is necessary to establish administrative organs which should be responsible for the formulation of laws, rules, and regulations for the administration of the zone. The establishment of political, economic, and social instruments and the organizational techniques over the whole of the continent must be built up on the basis of scientific socialism. The organs of the people's administration are vital factors in the liberation movement and must, look at them, we're getting into the index, and must be organized to become the nuclei from which the People's Revolutionary States and the All-African Union government will crystallize. So this is the last one, it looks like. Materials for destruction. The manufacture and use of destructive materials such as TNT, plastic bombs, dynamite, gunpowder, incendiary bottles, detonators, and lightning fuses form part of the basic training of the freedom fighter. Recruits will be taught in the base training camps and workshops how to make them and the other many and varied weapons used by guerrilla units and by saboteurs operating within enemy-held positions. The fully trained guerrilla is armed both ideologically and physically for the revolutionary struggle. Tactics of guerrilla warfare rest in the main with him. With the support of the masses and with the unified direction of the Revolutionary Party, he is invincible. People of Africa arise. Defeat imperialism, neocolonialism, and settler domination. Stand together and unite in the revolutionary struggle. Forward to victory. We shall conquer. And that's it. Whoa! Alright. Man, that was tough. Okay. That was tough, but so far, that's it. Asante sana. Alright, my people. Thanks so much, everybody. If anybody had a question, let me know now. Otherwise, it's 4 hours. And asante sana for listening. I realize there's a little delay, so you guys don't know I'm finished yet. But thanks so much. All. Let me write it down here because you probably get this one quick. Alright, so I would say Shemiam Hotep if there are no questions or there are no concerns. And thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with me. It was tough. It was a lot. It was 4 hours. But, I appreciate every moment. And thank you so much. Dua Aman. And thank you. Thank you, Sister Mello, and of course, thanks everybody who stuck around, including Munchaka and whomever else, and Minka Baraka, Asante Sana, and yeah, this was a good book. I think I should have read this a lot sooner. I haven't read it before, so I'm glad I could read it today and read it with you guys. I'm probably going to download this one and play it for my son, and watch him not watch it. But, yeah, Shemiam Hotep, and thank you for joining. And hopefully I can see you guys tomorrow. Or not me, but somebody. Empower, thanks for sticking around. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, if not me, at least we know Brother Amawale put together a really good program for tomorrow, and I'm about to hit him up about the tickets. I ain't never seen no tickets, but but it is what it is. But Shemion Hotel.